What's going on, everybody? It is Monday, January 18th, 2021. I am Brandon Toy, host of Brandon Show. Hope everybody's doing okay out there. I'm doing pretty good. Let's see who we got in the chat. Boney Dee, Yo Yo, Ian Adams, Flat for Life, Bill G, Smurfer Girl Whatevs, SE Montreal. What's up, SE? Let's see who else we got. Anthony Burrows, Page 42, The Snark, Matrix Media, Howard Moore, Almost Unbelievable, and more to come, I'm sure. Hope everybody's doing okay. And I see a thumbs up from Ian Adams. I'm going to take it that you guys can hear me, which is always good news. Let's see, what do we got going on tonight? We have got some stuff that I've collected over the weekend. SE Montreal, hopefully he'll join the panel. He's been taking some sun pictures. I want to talk to him about what he has learned from filming the sunspots and just about his footage and how he took it. Saw a Flatzoid video that was pretty interesting about conspiracy cats we can talk about. And then the plain truth. Don't expect he'll be on tonight. He might, but he is on location filming the Channel Islands. He did a live stream this morning. I'll put the link in the chat later on, and you can see what he's doing out there. Looked like it was a pretty hazy, foggy morning, if anybody caught that, but he should come back with some really cool stuff, so that's good. Let's see what else is going on. Lots of talk about rocket engines in a vacuum. Ever since that show with Rumpus, the professional ballers in the chat have been very excited and very insistent that I absolutely must believe that rocket engines work in a vacuum, which I have no problem. I've just been asking for evidence. A demonstration of rocket engines working in a vacuum would be cool. They did produce a couple of documents, but they were from NASA, and they rate the engines inside a vacuum chamber. So it'll say like 2,800 pounds force thrust in dash vac. So, you know, I guess that means that's how much thrust it'll produce in a vacuum. I don't know. I really don't care, to be honest, either way. This isn't really about the shape of the Earth, whether rocket engines work in a vacuum, and I could lean either way. All I asked was, do you have a demonstration that shows it? Because the demonstrations I've seen with a little toy rocket engine inside of a barbecue or inside of a little tube didn't really cut it for me. And I would like some actual scientific evidence that's repeatable, falsifiable, all that good stuff to base my opinion on. That's all. Because somewhere in my head, it seems to be counterintuitive that these rockets that are relying on, from what I read, the force produced with the thrust don't have any interchange in energy with the atmosphere outside that causes them to move forward. But hey, I'm willing to be convinced either way. And the NASA stuff was like, yeah, that's what NASA's saying, but I wouldn't be a flat earther if I believed everything NASA said. So where does that leave me? I either have to trust NASA, or I have to just leave the question open and say, well, it could be either way. I really don't know. I don't have evidence either way that they will or won't work. So I'll just leave it open. And that's all. And these guys cannot stand that. It's pretty funny how insistent they are on this one. I don't know why, but all of them are excited about this one. Yeah. Bill G, Brandon, you wanting actual evidence is just ridiculous. Get over yourself. Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel too. What is the big deal? I don't understand. Why do people feel the need that we have to agree with everything they say? Well, it seems like, I don't know. We don't always have to agree. We don't always have to make a decision on something if we don't think that the evidence exists. I don't think that's being dishonest. I think that's just waiting for evidence, scientific evidence, before you actually say, yes, I believe that. You know, having a standard for what you base your beliefs on. But that's just me. Anyway, wanted to say about moderators. We have a few moderators, and the reason I have created some mods in the chat now is because we're getting into a situation where I wasn't paying attention to the chat. Somebody was coming in, doxing or near doxing someone, or just saying ridiculous, vile crap. And I wouldn't catch it during the show. And then after the show, someone would point out like, oh shit. Yeah, I didn't pay attention. So that is why we have mods now. I'm not looking to kick all the ballers out of chat. I want us to have good constructive conversations in the chat. If you disagree with someone, if you have an argument with someone, please don't ban them. Don't time them out just for that. But if someone is being vile, and you'll know the difference. That's what it's there for. So please just be judicious with the power that you have in the chat. Eventually, we may have a baller or two that are also mods, based on who hangs around all the time and who I think I can trust with the hammer. But for right now, I think we have enough active mods to keep the chat at least civil, somewhat civil. And even a little bit of trolling is okay. It's just when it goes over the line, it's like, don't sit here and just call flat earthers stupid constantly. Don't just sit here and attack certain individuals and say nasty shit about them. It's not necessary. But the channel's open to both sides of the argument, both sides, ballers and flat earthers. So I don't want anybody to feel like they can't say what they think without getting timed out. But anyway, I think I've said enough about that. You guys get it. I just wanted to make it clear again what my intentions were with moderating the chat. All right. So we've got a few people in Discord. Let me open that up and we'll see what they're talking about and get it going.
From another.
Yeah.
And they have to get you into that lead where you're following them from one abstraction to another.
Rather than holding them to their initial assertion.
Yep. Yeah. Show me the curve. Let's look up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the sun and the moon and the stars.
Zone.
Let's look down at the ground. No, let's look up.
Okay.
Let's look out. Let's say there's no curve. Oh, it's refraction. Well, refraction isn't curve. So they're already putting their foot in their mouth.
Well, I have a personal fallacy of my own, and that's the sky fallacy. When you ask to show you proof that the Earth is curved, they go straight up into the sky. And I call that the sky fallacy.
Good one, Mark. Yeah.
Did they get to know exactly what you mean by that? We don't live in the sky.
Well, I like some stuff like the pure physics. I heard him talking a bit about rockets and space and vacuums.
Yes.
They don't work. And I'm glad he's talking about it, and I hope they talk a lot about it today. Because little Cody in Cody's labs, I liked him until he turned into a little shit puke, just denier. But he put some different rocket propellants, including peroxide, high explosive propellant, in a vacuum, and he couldn't get gunpowder to burn or combust. He couldn't.
Was that with the laser, Jimbo?
Yep. And
yeah,
he could not get solid rocket fuel, which I can make and demonstrate.
Yeah.
Will not burn in vacuum, and neither would the peroxide, a high explosive with its own oxygen, would not combust.
I'm going to play a NASA engineer here.
But hold on, let me finish.
Oh,
so
sorry. Go ahead.
He looked really disappointed that he couldn't get none of his propellants to combust. So what does he do? He goes away for a week, comes back with a new one where he's got this little vial with some fuel in it, and it's able to produce enough, gas to actually move it in the vacuum chamber, but only by cheating. The little shit.
Yeah.
So that's what we're up against. Even when they know they're fucking wrong, they'll go and they'll twist and distort and they'll bullshit and believe their own bullshit. That's what we're dealing with.
What's up, guys?
Yeah. Hi, Brandon.
Hey, we're live, just to let you guys know. But we can do the introductions after we. Mark, you were going to say something about having your NASA engineer hat on. I just wanted to let you guys know I was here.
Oh, okay. Well, in the rocket, you've got your oxygen and your combustible gas, whatever they use, and they mix together in the combustion chamber. So the oxygen will make it ignite.
Right. Yeah, that's what I've heard too, that it's like an internal ignition. That's not the block in my brain that keeps me from saying, oh yeah, rockets definitely work in a vacuum. It's
No, they won't even ignite in a vacuum, and they will not stay lit in a vacuum. Put a fire in a little vacuum chamber, light it, and then suck all the air out. Guess what? Your fire's going to go out, buddy. You cannot support combustion in a vacuum. You cannot burn anything in a vacuum.
even with
Well,
this
well-
oxidizer that they have, though, Jimbo.
Look, little Cody at Cody's Labs did an experiment where in a vacuum chamber with a glass front, he put in gunpowder, solid rocket fuel made of sugar, iron filings, and potassium nitrate, and a peroxide-based high explosive. Now he closes the door, he lights each of them with regular air pressure through the glass, no problem. Gunpowder, poof, up in smoke. The rocket fuel burns away. The peroxide explosive, poof, it's gone.
But
Now he does
ignition.
He does the same thing after he sucks it to a vacuum. He laser lights the gunpowder. It will not ignite. He tries to ignite the solid rocket fuel. It will not ignite. And he
Petrol.
tries to ignite the explosives. They will not ignite. So he looks all sad. And he goes away sad. He's a sad Cody. And then he comes back a few days later, whatever, with his bullshit new rocket in a vial in a vacuum, and it moved. And now he's all happy that rockets work in space. It's a little shithead.
Hmm.
But check Cody's lab, and he does these combustions in a vacuum, and they all fail, even with high explosive.
Well, what was it
And-
that he
and
had in the
rock-
vial the last time when he got it to work? What was it he used that
He
time?
used a little glass vial that was actually sealed with a tiny hole in it. So within that vial,
And
when he
then,
lit the...
of course, that pushes off the smaller container inside.
Yeah, it created a
right? It fills
small
the space, that
atmosphere
explodes and gives propellant.
and
Exactly.
the potential for that little bit of motion and propulsion, but totally by fucking cheating. And if you look at his fucking experiment, you'll see he's fucking cheating. But anyway, in his original one, he's such a sad panda because his rockets don't work in a vacuum. Until he comes back later to fake it so he can believe it and continue believing his bullshit.
Hmm.
Anyway, Cody's Lab. Get that little guy, watch his little film. You'll see what I'm talking about. You cannot support combustion in a vacuum. Put a candle in a vacuum chamber, try to light it with a laser. Good fucking luck. It won't happen. I don't care what you got in
inside
there.
of a vacuum.
It will
what you
not
can do
ignite.
inside of a- What you can do inside of a vacuum is put another container inside of that container that has air inside of it and make an explosion inside
Yeah,
of that
that's
vacuum.
an independent
causing it.
system. And
Yeah.
Where do
but
you
the point
come-
is
Yeah,
that it's rigged, right?
Where do you come down on this issue, flat Earth data, of whether or not rockets will work in a vacuum? Well, they'll create thrust and propulsion as they do in the atmosphere in a vacuum.
According to third law, every reaction is an equal reaction, right?
Yep.
And then you have the second law, which is anytime you change velocity, there's an outside acting force. Well, if things are traveling through a void, which there's nothing to push off of because it's void of it, how are they going to change velocity? Okay, number one. Then they're telling us they're going to have propulsion at the rear end, but that it doesn't actually thrust. So if it doesn't thrust, you can't change velocity. But all your demonstrations on math says it does, and all your cartoons says it does. Where can I see this in reality? Show me something changing velocity without anything to push off of, or where do we see this stuff?
Yeah. I think maybe your microphone's rubbing against something, Data. It's making a swooshing noise when you talk. But yeah, I'm just looking for a good demonstration. I was talking about this before I came into the Discord, that I have been provided with a couple of NASA documents that mention
I put a link
thrust
to
inside
Cody
of
doing
a
the
vacuum.
gunpowder. I put a link to Cody and the gunpowder. I'll try to find the one with gunpowder, the solid fuel, and the peroxide explosive, high explosive. I think it might all be in this one video. But again, he can't get none of that shit to light in a vacuum. Sorry, Charlie. Vacuums do not support combustions. Even if you went out into a vacuum with a lit little flame behind your ass, it would be extinguished.
So Professor Phil says they're not combusting in a vacuum. They combust in the combustion chamber. All burning happens in the combustion chamber. That's what he said. Not that I agree with him, but
Then it's not
that's what he said.
exerting force anywhere. And any force coming out the back end of that nozzle is being neutralized by being sucked into nothingness and being applied to the forward motion of zero.
Well, I have a question. I'll give a question. So let's say we did have a device, a cylindrical device hanging from the inside of a vacuum, and you had the propulsion devices on the side of it, of this cylinder, and you engage these little devices on the side of the cylinder. Will it actually change the movement of the cylinder inside the vacuum? I don't think so, because every display of anything inside of a vacuum that, from high to low pressure, right? It's an equalization here, which when there's an equalization, there may be an exchange of temperature from hot to cold. But that's the only thing that I can see from practical observations and demonstrations. I haven't seen a device being changed trajectory in the void.
Yeah, and I've got an example on screen. If you guys can see, I shared my screen with you guys of one that was provided to me over the weekend. You guys have probably seen this. It's pretty old. But let's see what you guys think about this. I'll show you the setup he's got. So he's got this tube, right? And looks to be about a 6 foot long plastic tube, some clear PVC pipe.
So I did a video on this. Brandon, I did a video on this. If you want to just skip to the end, he opens up the back.
This is a cheat. This is an absolute cheat, my friend.
I'm going to get to the punchline, guys. Open
up the back and you'll see the little burn mark on the thing, dude. I called this out like 3 years ago.
Yeah. This is old. I just wanted to show this and get your guys' thoughts on it. So he's got the vacuum. He's got this like spring-loaded thing here, right? And it sits in the middle there. And evidently, if there's enough pressure put against it, the idea is that this rocket will move and pull on that coil. And then, I'll just skip to the end and show what's going to happen. See what you guys think. So he fires it off. Oh, back it up just a second. There we go. So he's going to fire it off.
The gas being expelled is creating a zone of where it can actually build pressure and then move the little rocket forward.
Yeah, now watch this. So here,
it lights,
it shoots out the smoke, and then it moves forward. And that's what
the
I kind of think is happening
back
too.
From rebounding at the back is moving it forward, really. That chamber is too small to be a valid test. I did put in back Cody's, if fire in a vacuum. Can you do fire in a vacuum?
Well, hold on, just watch this thing. It doesn't start moving until the back fills up with smoke. Now watch it in slow motion. So it shoots the smoke out. I don't see any movement on the thing. Now do you see the smoke coming back towards it? Right?
Yep.
Now it starts to move forward.
Yeah.
The rebounding gas.
That's
absolutely.
the problem with this one. It's like it's pushing off the rebounding gas. It could be.
Actually, if you go right to the end, Brandon, if you go right to the end, you will see there's actually a burn mark on the container. If you go right to the end of the video, he opens it up and there's a burn mark there. So you can see that it actually burnt part of the plastic pushing off of it.
Yeah, I think that's what you're talking
about. It had an equal and opposite reaction pushing back into the tube because it couldn't go out the back.
Professor Phil says, I lecture in rockets and rocket technology. If you think your speculation is better than what you can get from an actual rocket scientist, then so be it. Believe what you like. Well,
you ever watch the Muppet Show with the two hecklers?
door's open. You can come in and talk to us about it if you want, Bill.
He's
We're
like
just
one of those
discussing
hecklers.
something that's been questioned. That's all.
Yeah, we're here. He's not.
Brandon,
you know?
he has the same opinion as Rumpus, is that anything moving through the atmosphere at high velocity wouldn't affect the atmosphere and cause resistance and something to push off of. You can clearly see in that demonstration there, absolutely the atmosphere will be able to push off. It clearly shows you.
Yeah. All these bozos will slant their experiments. This is not a big enough vacuum chamber for that freaking experiment. This, you know what?
But you have to see, Jimbo, right away. You would see push right away. Okay, there's no push right away from ignition.
Absolutely.
To propulsion, there's no push. So there you go. It's dead in the water as we speak.
I still think what I put in back, Cody, from a few years back when this all started, he tried to prove you could have combustion in space, and he failed. And then he went on to cheat. So I got his failure, his cheat, and they're both in the back chat there. So I don't know if you want to show them, but combustion is not supported in a vacuum. I don't know how many times I can say it. Put a candle, a lit candle in a vacuum chamber, suck the air out. Please tell me what's going to happen.
A candle is not rocket. I mean, the candle's obviously going to go out.
Watch little Cody, even if it has its own oxygen supply, like the peroxide, solid rocket fuel, and gunpowder, they will not combust in a vacuum from their dry, inert state. Period.
Jimbo, a diesel engine, diesel doesn't ignite very. Once it's compressed.
We're not talking about diesel engines.
There's a glow plug though, bro.
Let's
Are you
maybe
gonna
go
say
with Cody's fucking vacuum instead of speculation and see him fucking cheat his lying little ass off like other fucking little globe space believers.
All right. Well,
Jimbo, if you've got a supply of oxygen, whether it's in a tank or in the atmosphere, you've got to make sure that your argument is saying that there's no oxygen.
If you look, peroxide is abundant and self-explosive. It self-detonates. It don't need outside oxygen normally.
Okay,
solid rocket fuel has its own oxygen. It doesn't need outside oxygen to combust. Nor does gunpowder. They all have their own source of oxygen.
Okay.
Do you get it?
Well, I'll trust your.
You don't get it, but watch Cody's little film. He cannot ignite these bitches unless they're in an atmosphere.
Okay, well,
so they can generate some heat or do whatever.
Okay.
I think the vacuum sucks away heat of combustion. I don't know for sure, but it will not support combustion in a fucking vacuum.
All right, Jimbo, we're still going to talk about it, man. Just
what's so hard about that?
Isn't one of their claims that they figured out how to make a rocket fuel that ignites without oxygen? Isn't that one of their claims?
The process of hydrazine in the tubing. Werner von Braun talks about it. They still haven't changed it since then.
Picking up some background noise from somebody there, but we do have one of the purveyors or believers in this who thinks they have some evidence. Flurfer aka Big Gambino. What's going on, man? Hello. Okay, he can't talk right now, I guess. Can't speak. Okay, working or something. We did get a super chat come in from Why Kick a Mook House. So cool that you all got your degrees in aerospace engineering. I am very proud. Well, thank you. I don't have one, but it's cool that you would think based on the discussion that we do. Professor Phil, in a vacuum chamber, there is positive pressure.
Wah, wah, wah.
Okay. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I get you. All right. So I'll show you the documents that I was provided. Here's one of them. And I think this came from Flurfer Nerfer, actually. So hopefully you can talk at some point. But performance of the spacecraft propulsion research facility during altitude firing test at the Delta III upper stage. So I'll save you the gory details, but there also is a PDF attached down here. And essentially what this describes, and it is a NASA document, mind you, is this vacuum chamber, which is actually sounds pretty cool that they test rocket engines in. And it talks about the capabilities of the vacuum chamber and kind of how it operates and the testing of the vacuum chamber, not so much the testing of the rockets. But there was another one, and this one was another NASA document, I believe. If this is the one I'm thinking of, where they do mention some of the engines, if I can find it, that were tested. Okay, so here it is. The ICPTA uses an integrated pressure-fed cryogenic LOX methane propulsion system, including a reaction control system with 28-pound force -vac, two 7-pound force -vac engines, and one 2,800-pound force -vac main engine. And what they told me was this -vac means this is the measure of how much thrust the engine gets in a vacuum. So does anybody know anything about this that can confirm that's what that means?
Look, they use a conventional spark plug in one of them.
Yeah, I don't know how convincing this is, but I did point out this is from NASA, the very people that we question about lying to us and feeding us propaganda about the shape of the Earth and space flight and all that stuff. So it's kind of hard to take this at face value, given that it's coming from those very same people. Any thoughts on that? No?
Just garbage babble on paper. Again, you know, I like to see tests, concrete, hands-on. Little Cody does a beautiful test to see if fire works in a vacuum. And we're just fucking dancing around the fucking thing. I don't know. Maybe take 2 minutes on that and come back to the rest of the garbage that prove rockets do work in space.
Yeah, I'll open it, Jimbo. This is the video that goes along with one of those papers. And this is supposedly one of the engines being tested in this large vacuum facility. But, you know, it doesn't show any thrust or propulsion, right? It just fires the engine. And you don't even really see the engine move like it wants to move upward. I don't know if it's like bolted to this.
Looks like big old fucking ostrich eggs.
That's the test, 8 seconds long?
Yeah, that's
Or
it.
The extra
Wow, I'm a believer now.
I know this was originally what he sent me because I said, well, show me a rocket engine being tested in a vacuum chamber. And this is what he sent me, which it does technically fit what I asked for, but it doesn't show that the engine's capable of going anywhere, right? Which is the whole point of contention, really.
They're all wrapped in aluminum foil instead of gold foil. That must mean something is genuine in there. Ooh, look at that blue plasma. Wow.
Yeah.
How do we know there's vacuums at negative 28 inches? We don't. No fucking clue.
This proves absolutely
Scale
nothing.
model.
That's kind of what I felt when I saw this. I was like, yeah, what does this tell me? And then I read the paper to go along with it, and I thought, well, okay, so they have a vacuum chamber that they test in. This doesn't tell me what the performance of the engines are as far as their capabilities to move something in a vacuum.
You got everything in pretty space foil. Gold foil, silver foil, aluminum foil. You can't go to space without having everything wrapped up in, like, you know when you buy little kisses and chocolate stuff and it's got that aluminum wrap on it, it wouldn't be the same without it.
Flurper,
without
why don't you come on and tell
wrapping,
us, show us the parts of the paper. We can show the audience what parts of the paper you believe proves the point that you're making. You sent me a clip earlier. It'd be a lot easier if you just came on and said, hey guys, here's the part of the paper. Here's what you're not seeing. Here's what you're not understanding. And we can go from there. He's talking to me in the back chat, but let's see, where was this Cody Labs? Maybe he'll come in. Fire in a vacuum.
Put it in the general.
Okay, I see it.
The second one is actually fire in a vacuum, I guess.
All right, so
Professor,
here's
come on the show, bro. We're not gonna bite you. Come on, we're gonna
Yeah,
be polite.
this is his bullshit one. If you play the other one first, he uses I think the other one is the one he's actually honest in.
Okay, so you didn't
I've
want.
got a question.
Was that Howard?
Yes, yes. So, if combustion requires an oxidizer like oxygen, and say you were in a vacuum and you had fuel and an oxidizer, why would it not burn?
You tell me. Cody tried to do it, and he couldn't make any of it burn, including high explosives. You're not getting it. It
Yeah, I
has
do
its
get
own oxygen. All of these things have their own oxygen to support combustion. Yet when they're doing it in a vacuum, they don't combust.
But Jimbo, I understand what
I
you're
think
saying, but
vacuum
there
takes
are
away the
many.
heat. It boils
There are
water
many-
at a lower temperature, evaporates all kinds of
Yeah.
fluids at lower temperatures, and I believe it takes away the heat of combustion when the laser tries to ignite them. It's just too much vacuum to fill. It can't support the combustion, but that's my own opinion. Let's watch the film and this little prickhead try to prove that you can combust in space.
Is there a timestamp you want me to start it at, or was it at the timestamp?
No, I don't know how to show these fuckers with, copyright and all this shit, but he can't get fuck all to burn. And they all have their own oxygen supply.
All right, so describe.
And then he cheats in the second one. That's my point.
Yeah, this
So
is
I
the
don't know.
second
I
one.
don't want to fight with anyone.
No reason to fight. We're just discussing this. So what's he doing here? He's got a vacuum chamber, I guess.
Yeah, in is fire possible in a vacuum? He does at first he puts stuff in the vacuum with its own ignitions, the oxygen and stuff, and with air in the chamber, it ignites through the glass, no problem. But then when he does the same products with the air sucked out, none of them support combustion. Is the point.
Okay. I can't
So
quite
even if
tell
they
what he's
have
trying
their
to,
own
what he's doing there.
oxidizer, they cannot even get them to ignite in space. If they were ignited when they got into a vacuum, they would go out.
What about this? What Phil's saying about this internal, and they do it in the combustion chamber.
Nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. You watch this. Like I say, combustion is not supported in a vacuum. End of story. It's fiction. The concept is fiction.
Okay, then it
Now
looks like
he's
he's
got a
trying to light.
vacuum applied. Look, that's gunpowder. It ain't burning, Charlie.
Huh. Yeah, that's
It
interesting.
will not combust in a vacuum. How come? And like I say, he does with high explosive, and in the vacuum, it does not combust, and it has its own oxygen supply internally. There's solid rocket fuel in the air, no problem. It's burning. Without the air, he can't even get it to do sweet fuck all.
That's what this is right here, without the air.
I think so.
All right, so here he's trying to light it.
And it's a no-go. All the smoke is being sucked away. He can't develop enough heat of combustion internally on the substance. It will not combust
He's
even though
trying
it
to
has
light
its
it
own
with a
oxygen.
laser.
I think the vacuum
He's
cools
trying
it
to
off.
light it with a laser.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what he's a laser.
He's using, I think, a blue laser, which will fucking
I
light
would-
anything, even through glass.
Yeah,
I
I've
have a
seen this
blue laser. I
before.
don't
That's a
use it.
powerful laser he has.
Yeah, I have a blue laser, and it doesn't have a battery in it, and I don't use it. It's not safe.
Hey, just
Yeah,
a
I would-
question, Brandon. Brandon, regarding the rocket versus the jet engine.
Now, the white powder he was
let me-
going to do is the high
Hello?
explosive. Sorry for interrupting. That's the peroxide.
Okay.
I was going to say between the rocket and a missile, I believe there's a nozzle. It's a difference. The reason I'm bringing it up is we've got high altitude aircraft that uses turbine jet engines, basically blowing, combustion out the back end. They have a limitation to velocity or to the altitude, and limitation to velocity based on the altitude, and that has everything to do with the atmosphere. So if they're going to talk about rockets and all this ability to travel into space, what is the big distinguishing difference between the engines? Because last I checked, it was just one has a breather and one doesn't.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that I can give a good answer to that. I'm not knowledgeable
We're still getting
enough.
away from the question of combustion in a vacuum, and we're trying to finish with one point.
Yeah, jet engines
Will it
require
burn?
atmosphere.
Will it continue to burn? Will it ignite?
Here's the thing, though. They can inject oxygen in with the hydrogen
It
into a
don't
chamber.
matter. It will
Let me
not
finish.
support combustion. You can inject it out your ass if you want.
When they
It still
inject
won't
oxygen, listen. When they inject oxygen into the cylinder with the hydrogen, they can make combustion because they're
prove
injecting
it
the
in a
atmosphere.
vacuum. You cannot prove it. Here we
The
see it
vacuum is
not supporting
nothing.
combustion with the high explosives. You know what a high explosive is? It's like the highest rating for an explosive you can get.
He's using a laser,
It won't
Jimbo.
burn. It won't
Jimbo,
ignite. It won't detonate. How
Jimbo,
thick can it be?
the weakness in your argument is that we have a chamber. We can create any atmosphere whatsoever in a chamber. What our argument is, the pressure in the chamber next to a vacuum will not create thrust.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my question.
Well,
Exactly.
Well,
But
I thought the main
That's
point was
the
does
point.
the fucking rocket work in a vacuum? Support combustion.
Jimbo, he's
Ignite.
using a
Jimbo,
laser.
right? First, you
Yeah,
have to
ignite.
achieve combustion,
It won't work
then
if
you
it
have to
works.
achieve thrust.
Look
have
at
two
this.
issues
Is that
here.
fucking exploding? No. It should detonate.
But it's not in a combustion chamber, is it? It's
Fucking vacuum chamber like space.
okay. All right.
yeah, but hold on, Jimbo. This is, I think you're maybe we're missing the distinction you're trying to make, or the point you're trying to make, or you're missing the distinction we're making. We're talking
Maybe
about
I am.
them exploding it within the combustion chamber where they're adding oxygen into the chamber. That's not in the
Combustion
vacuum
chamber
of
is
space.
exposed to the vacuum through the tail, like through that little nozzle, that little hole.
Yeah.
So it's an open chamber. It's open to the vacuum.
That's where the exhaust goes.
That's where the vacuum is. And it flows right up into the chamber because it fills. Do you understand?
No.
It sucks right into where the fucking fuel is combusting. It
I
sucks
think
it
Jimbo
right
has
out.
a point here.
It's not a chance.
No, it don't work like that.
Yeah.
Well,
You
I
break
know
the
we
seal
have some
between the
rocket. We
Let's see
have
what
some
happens.
actual.
One fills the other at 500 miles an hour plus. I mean, I don't know what to say.
No, it's
It
all
will
good.
not support any combustion in a vacuum.
No, I get it,
It
Jimbo.
will not
But if they're
initiate
if they're creating that explosion inside the combustion chamber, the exhaust is going out, and they're constantly feeding this oxidizer. And I could see how they could create that.
Oh, no, it can't. They can't constantly
Exactly,
feed what
Brandon.
they can't ignite.
Exactly, Brandon. You're
Can't
right,
ignite
Brandon.
in the first place.
But I'm certainly no expert either way. I do find this interesting that they can't get anything to explode inside this vacuum chamber. What does he finally get to explode? You said there was a vial of something, Jimbo?
The problem with that, what he's showing is he's using a laser as a source of ignition, and that's going to be his problem.
That's a retarded concept right there, too. Please explain why it can ignite it with the atmosphere through the glass and then not when there's a... But it can displace it, disrupt it, but it just won't seem to fucking combust. Are you
If he
really
put
fucking serious with what you just said?
if he put an electronic ignition coil on the in there with the gunpowder or
Fucking
whatever,
melt it. It still
it
wouldn't
would
combust.
ignite. Yes, it
So
would.
you fucking take a fucking electronic ignition coil, put some fucking solid rocket fuel. I'll make it for you and send it to you.
All right.
I'll order
You're-
peroxide
I
for
agree.
you. You do the whole fucking experiment with your heating fucking coil. Bullshit. You're as fucking bad and a liar as Cody is. Fucking distractor.
All right. Let's calm down.
Hey, yeah, Jimbo, you need to calm the fuck down. This is not a damn fight. I mean, it's a discussion. Why do you get so pissed off?
Anyway, so I don't know, Jeremy. I think you believe the rockets will create thrust and propulsion in a vacuum chamber, don't you? Because I think you've said Yeah, the ballers. I agree with the ballers on this one, which is fine. But why is it you think that it'll work? What evidence have you seen that leads you to believe that there's no difference?
I haven't even looked into the demonstrations they do, because it'd be such a small vacuum anyways, unless they did it in that big one where they dropped a feather in the balloon. But the point is, if you can eject mass on one side fast enough, in theory, it should push you forward.
But here's the thing.
Here's the thing. Newton's third
Here's the
law.
thing.
When you read about these engines and how they create thrust, it has to do with this pressure differential that they're creating with the exhaust.
Yeah, they got a small area. They got a small, before that giant cone that comes out the back or whatever, they got a little chamber that makes a little atmosphere before it can all escape because the hole's small. And then they explode something in there and boom, it comes out the back. That's their story. I mean,
yeah.
And it on paper it works.
Why don't this is so easy to figure out, gentlemen, because they have enough big enough chambers. All they have to do, get a little rocket, tie a rope, right, and we'll see that the smoke will not have enough time to fill the chamber, right? So in the first, 20 seconds or so, if that rocket moves, there it is. It's game over.
That's all I've been looking for. That would absolutely convince me.
Me too, Brandon. I cannot find anything like that. All these small little chambers.
Yeah, and I don't think that's unreasonable just to ask. Just show us a demo. I get the Newton's third law argument. I just want to see it because it just doesn't seem like it should work that well.
If you were to test this, you would need to use a rocket with the same. Hold on a second. If you were to test this, you would need to use. Hold on a second. If you were to test this, you would need to use the same kind of technology that NASA's doing with their rockets. So you would need all the little tiny things scaled down to like a ridiculously small size.
Why would you need that? All you need is the propellant.
Because they're creating an atmosphere and then igniting it. Like you would need that you'd need to have that on
you create the exact internal chamber. Yeah, okay, we can do that.
Yeah, you'd have to have the whole. You can't just throw like a ST's rocket or something in there and see if it works, because that shit's not gonna. It's probably not gonna work. Like Jimbo was saying, you can't combust shit in a vacuum.
Well, yeah, a scaled down one of their rockets, scaled down version, the nozzle. It shouldn't be the end of the world. Hey, we'll ask Professor Phil Bell to help us design it, and then just crack it open. That's it.
You'd have to use the same design NASA's using. That's what I'm saying. You'd have to get their design and just recreate it on a smaller scale.
No problem. We have Professor Phil Bell.
So can I ask a question, gentlemen? What really is the difference between a high-end turbine engine that has high velocity gases combusting coming out of it versus a rocket? What is the major difference between the two of them?
I don't know.
Yeah, the jet engine drives a fan. The jet engine drives a big fan in the front of it.
No, okay. So sorry. So let me rephrase that. I know the difference. What I meant is the propulsion factor. How is it different?
Sorry, was that to me? My AirPod.
I think he's just asking in general.
Okay, so we can all agree that a turbine engine thrusts the plane or aircraft forward in the atmosphere. We can all agree that at certain velocity, at certain altitude, the thrust factor from these turbine engines are not effective. They claim that NASA claims that the nozzle gets smaller and smaller, therefore compressing more and more of the fluid, creating higher.
If I could mention,
that's their compensation for the high altitude. However, it's not the engine per se; it's the propulsion per se. Explain to me how they don't apply. One solely works off of propulsion due to the explosion.
Well, Cody does a fan test
with a cone.
Yeah, Cody does a fan test too with a fan and a feather in the vacuum. And guess what? It's a Mars simulation for wind on Mars, like from the movie. And he tries to get the feather to move in a vacuum with the fan going really high. no movement, nada, zilch, at Martian atmosphere. Oh, Cody, I'm so sad.
Yeah,
Your little feather didn't move. So you want one with a turbine in a vacuum? You've got it right there too.
no, I think we
Not
can
just
all agree that the
rocket.
turbine is not going to work in the vacuum. But Data, I feel like you didn't get to finish your point.
It's just the propulsion factor. Both are expelling high velocity, one vector force. I don't know what you want to call it. Thrust, basically. So what are the differencing physics applied? Do not the same physics applied for all gases being expelled? Or is it because a rocket gets to rely on the Newton's third law, because without it, it wouldn't work in space?
Well, Cody tried to make Martian wind and failed at Martian atmospheric pressure, as NASA and the boys tell us it is. And it doesn't, he couldn't make wind to move a feather.
The
Yeah.
thing is, I give the Clovers good.
Another fail, Cody. Another fail, NASA.
There are several videos on YouTube that show rockets working in the vacuum. What are you talking about, you idiots?
Why don't you share one with us that you think shows?
What? Okay, was that one? I think I just caught you showing one of, was it Cody's lab with that in a big 50-gallon bucket?
It's more importantly about the lift.
So he demonstrates there.
Let me finish. No,
Well, I was actually in the middle.
Very circular, that drum.
No, it
limited space. It develops a pressure when those rockets fire.
Yes, but it still fires in a vacuum, doesn't it? You claimed
No,
it didn't even
It didn't fire.
Oh.
It didn't fire in a vacuum. He had it sealed in another container. with an
Yeah,
atmosphere.
yeah.
Inside
So
of
it's
it.
right. So he had a container. So he had the
area.
thing going. He just had a
Vacuum.
little rocket motor. It wasn't
It's
sealed
shooting
away from everything.
a
And he
little
had
Yeah,
it
so
in.
what does NASA do?
You
What does
don't mind
NASA
You guys
do?
are talking
Does
over
NASA
each
have
other.
these little exploding
Jimbo.
containers?
Right, so we've got two videos. There's another one. I don't know if you've seen the other one there with I've got a link. I found where they were showing the propulsion
for the air for the
rockets
ignition
in
of
a
the rocket.
vacuum chamber.
Ronco, did you see the glass vial that he had over his rocket so it had some air to ignite in? His little cheat. His little rocket didn't ignite in a vacuum, my friend.
That's
You look
justified
carefully.
pressure.
It's a cheat.
That does not provide the
glass
oxygen.
vial.
cheat.
It was
Rumpet,
Right,
that was
just
his
listen.
cheat.
Try
It's called
listening. Try
cheating.
listening.
Cheat.
Try listening. If you just have, oh my God,
Rumpus.
He cheated.
you've been
Providing
speaking.
a
How
little
about I've had 4
atmosphere
words so
to
far?
ignite the
Right, I'm
rocket
going to
in the
explain
first
it to
place.
you. I'm trying to
That little
explain it to you.
glass vial
You've had-
was not
Gentlemen,
there.
gentlemen.
Jesus Christ.
Hey, can we
Here we
have
go.
a discussion? Can we have a discussion?
Can Jimbo shut up? He's been speaking almost continuously for the last 5 minutes. Right, so
no,
the
you're wrong.
be quiet. Be
Jim,
quiet.
rather go with
Be
what you
quiet.
see. Okay, I'll shut up.
You're be quiet. Right, you've had lots of time. Right, so there are some things where, for instance, gunpowder and other things where in a vacuum, immediately it starts to develop a pressure. You've got to communicate the heat between the different bits. So if you just light up a tiny bit, and in a vacuum, the combustion materials that generate the heat are going to disappear very quickly into the vacuum. So you do have to keep some sort of pressure on them for a little bit to get it going. That's not to hold the air, which is what Jimbo idiotically is suggesting, because the oxygen, as he also said, he's contradicting himself.
You
Is
can
that,
hold
be
your
quiet,
jackass
be quiet, I
freaking
haven't finished my
comments
sentence,
and
nearly there,
insults
nearly
there,
there,
buddy,
nearly there,
or I'll
nearly
keep
there,
talking
nearly
till you
there,
shut up
nearly
and
there, I'm
apologize
talking,
for
you
it,
get a turn
jackass.
next,
So
you
if
get a
you think
turn
you
next,
can
you
just
twat,
fuck
Well,
off
you
and
get
this
a
is your
turn
fault,
next,
Rumpus,
I'm
because
still,
you ad
not have
hommed him.
repercussions to it.
yeah,
I'm
well,
not
I
going to
mean,
shut up till you say you're fucking
well, he's
sorry,
still
you
been talking for
jackass.
5 minutes.
So
He's
do
an
you
idiot.
mind saying you're
So the
sorry?
point is
Calling me
that
an idiot,
the
you
oxygen is
asshole.
in there in the
Or,
rocket,
you're just
and the
like,
other
you
video,
call
the
everyone
video
an
in
asshole here and an idiot,
the
jackass.
50-gallon
All right, cool.
50-gallon
Putting up
can.
with
Both of you
that
stop
shit
The
with
talking,
your
please.
50-gallon
fucking
can
car.
Stop
does
talking,
show this
both of you,
happening.
please.
And there's
Retract.
another one I can
I'm not
find
gonna
here
shut up
called Rockets in a
because you're all
Vacuum
fucking
Chamber,
assholes
which
and idiots
also
here.
demonstrates it. And what's more, I did say, I think last time I was on here, that there was NASA didn't have a large enough vacuum chamber. And I've just discovered they do. They have a very large vacuum chamber to emulate the pressure at 100,000 feet, in which they do actually test their rockets. I didn't realize this. So they do have a vacuum chamber in which they test their rockets. So there's another example. I haven't
We
found
already
any video
talked about
footage of
that.
it.
You didn't see the beginning of the.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So I
understand,
brought
yeah.
that up, and the only problem is because I read the paper that was provided by I think Flurfer Nerfer or one of the ballers in my Discord, and they have this video here, right? This is a video of them testing it at this Plum Brook Station facility. But we
Was that
can't
the
see
one?
any propulsion happening, right? That's what we're talking about still, is the
one I'm talking-
propulsion. And I'm just looking for a demo
The
of a
Stennis Space
rocket.
Center is the one I've got. The Stennis Space Center, Hancock County, Mississippi, is where they have got the. Oh no, it's up there. Oh, damn it! It's clicked on. Sorry about that. That might have been. No, the Stennis Space Center. Yeah, that's it. So
Yeah.
that's a different place to the. That's where they were testing the sea level. Oh, that's a sea level one. Okay, that's not the altitude one. Okay, sorry. It's the WSTF. Is that the one you're referring to?
Maybe. There was a couple papers I read that he sent. But all we're essentially looking for is a demo of the rocket.
Right, you want a video?
Yeah, we just want to see it happen. That's all.
Well, okay. I mean, I suppose if you regard, yeah. Well, NASA have one. They've built this huge thing to do these very high, emulates 100,000 feet, which is very close to being a vacuum, in which they do fire full-size rockets. So they've got that, but obviously, presumably, you just think that's just been built for giggles.
No, it makes sense to me, even if the rocket wasn't creating thrust inside the vacuum chamber, that you would want to test this in a vacuum chamber anyway.
Well, I must admit, I didn't think that would be logically possible because it'd be outputting so much stuff that it wouldn't keep it. But apparently, these things are just amazing at removing the creative pressure. So
exactly.
I didn't realize that such a thing existed, but apparently they do. So they do actually test things at the height they're 100,000 feet is very close to a vacuum. So but I haven't found a video yet. I've only been searching for the last 5-10 minutes, but they do emulate being at 100,000 feet. And we have videos of things going off. There's another video of things combusting in a vacuum chamber. But if you just put the powder, as Cody's lab did it, and you just fire a laser at it, immediately it starts to burn because you've only put it in one spot. The exhaust, the combusted materials are then going to disappear very rapidly, and so you've got to contain them. So the containment that's required is not to provide air or oxygen. It's just to contain the material that's burning. But there are other videos in here, like the one that I don't know if you've seen. Okay, I may have missed some bits. There's this one here called. I'll give you the link in the.
I just get a word for a second, real quick, Rumpus.
Go ahead.
You said NASA's testing. They got a vacuum chamber. They're testing these shits. Where's the video at? Where's the video?
That's what I haven't found that yet. But that doesn't mean to say.
I mean, don't they record everything for posterity? See how
Okay, perhaps they do. I mean, I just haven't had a chance to find it yet. But they have this test facility where they emulate being in a vacuum, and they've got them. They do actually use the rockets there. So, and that I believe is and that's a sea level.
I mean, if I was on your guys, listen, stop rambling. You just ramble and ramble. If I was on your guys' side, I would have this shit ready to go on the hip. They've been claiming this for years. Rockets don't work in a vacuum. NASA's been recording it all these years. Where the fuck's it at, bro?
Well, we know that rockets go up there. No one's thought we need to prove it to anybody because you can see the rockets going up high into space when you just look at the video. And the fact that we know that the pressure at 100,000 feet is next to a vacuum, you can see it in any video footage of a rocket going off into space. No one's thought to question this, and we've got several videos like the one I've just posted about rockets in a vacuum chamber, but apparently that's not good enough because the chamber's not big enough. Then we've got this NASA thing that is big enough to do it. Okay, so I haven't found a video of a rocket going off in this vacuum chamber that NASA doing yet, but no doubt there will be one somewhere. I'll try and find it.
Well, we've got one. We've got a video. It's 8-second long clip, but the engine, there's no way to tell that there's any thrust or any propulsion. It's tied down to a bench.
Oh, well, of course it would be. That's what you'd have to do, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, that's fine.
Exactly.
I mean,
otherwise
it's
going to shoot off.
It makes sense, but it doesn't give us what we're looking for. You understand?
Well, what do you want it to do? Do you want them to show you? Because you can't move because you've got to tie it down, so you can't so it can't go anywhere. That's the whole point of it. Otherwise, it would shoot off into the distance. So you've got to tie it down. What more do you want?
Well, I think something like this where we can't point to it and say it's too small, it's filling up with gas, and the gas is what's making the propulsion take place.
Right, but we had Jimbo saying you can't have a combustion in a vacuum chamber, which you've then got. So that's invalidating Jimbo's point. Okay, so you want to see what you want to see then is something that really looks as though it's pressing on something, I suppose, and you want to see some stresses in action, I suppose, is what you're looking for. And perhaps would it be good enough for you to have a force?
We want a rocket in a free chamber where the gases cannot push against themselves. The rocket cannot push against, or the wall, or the gases. That's what we want.
Yeah.
Well, that would require an enormous vacuum chamber. One bigger than we can build.
Well, we have enormous vacuum chambers.
Not the
Readily
size
handy.
you've defined.
All
If you
we
have a
need is
rocket-
the money and the capability to.
If you have a rocket that does the force that will take us something into space, it inevitably, the whole point about these things, they're chucking out loads of mass and gas, and that means in an instant you would fill up the most enormous room with the exhaust.
What are you rambling on about? A small rocket,
You want a small rocket, right? So you don't
Yes.
want a big one then. Okay, so you're happy with a small rocket in there. So if they put a little firework-sized rocket inside this chamber for your benefit, that would convince you then?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, okay, well, but obviously they're not testing little firework-sized
Hey,
rockets.
Well, we know.
Rumpus, can you show me anywhere where an object can change velocity by an outside acting force inside of a vacuum? Can you show me that?
Well, we've got that one in the 50-gallon, whatever it was, the guy had the spinning thing inside a vacuum. He's got something there, a little rocket engine, and then rotates. So that's causing it to move in a vacuum.
Again, can you show me anything that's inside of a vacuum that's moving that can change velocity
We're turning around
with an outside acting force?
Sorry, with or without an outside acting force? Was that with or without? I didn't quite catch that.
So according to Newton's second law, to change velocity, you need an outside acting force.
Well, yes, but okay. Second law means there has to be a force, but if you throw mass out one end, Newton's third law says everything has an equal opposite reaction, and also the law of conservation.
Focus, Rumpus. I asked you if you can show me something in transition in the vacuum of space changing velocity. Can you show me anything that is related to the second law in space?
Second law. So you want an external force acting on something in a vacuum to cause it to change things. So if I had a spring or something in a vacuum, then would cause it to move. Is that what you're saying? Is that do you? So
Let me repeat it again. Can you show me any object in
just
space
asked you a question. If
being
what
able
I've
to
just
change
described does
velocity
satisfy
in
your
direction
criteria?
by an acting outside force?
Right.
Now, listen. So listen, Rumpus. I'll tell you where my argument's coming from, so you get a better picture. Anytime you've ever seen any device operate in your atmosphere, you have these little propulsions up the sides, trajectories, right? Little correction trajectories. If you see, they're activated by pulses, which propel a force outside, thereby changing the direction of the vehicle. You're familiar with these, right?
You're talking about RCSs. You're very quiet and very difficult to hear. Your microphone's terrible. Are you talking about RCSs, little adjustment things to adjust the attitude?
I'm talking about Newton's second law. Any object to change velocity is an outside acting force. So if you have an object in space that needs to change velocity, how will it change velocity if it needs an outside acting force to push off of?
Well, it doesn't. If you have something
it doesn't. Okay, it doesn't. Where can I see it displayed? Where can I see this?
Well, we've got examples of things in vacuum chambers moving due to rockets and things.
Where can I see this, Rumpus? Again, I've asked you twice now. Do you want me a third time? Where can I see it?
You've seen the video, the one in the 50-gallon tank, the guy.
There is no changing of velocity.
It is. It goes around. It's not moving, and then it spins around inside that chamber.
Yeah, changing velocity, dude. So if something is already in motion, you're going to change its trajectory with an outside force. This is Newton's second law.
Your force is equal to mass times acceleration, yes. So that's what happens inside that 50-gallon thing that, is it Cody or someone else did? In which case...
So we're at a disposition, we're at a standstill here because you think that displays Newton's second law. Is that correct?
Of course, force is equal to mass times acceleration. It starts to accelerate, therefore there's a force acting on it. It's very simple.
Okay, so how do you change one's velocity without an acting force? So if the device was spinning already, Rumpus,
no, it wasn't spinning already.
If it was spinning already,
no,
Rumpus.
It wasn't spinning already.
If it was spinning already, Rumpus,
so there's
and I ignited the gases, would it change the velocity of the device?
So I didn't hear the start of your question. Say that again, please. You're very
if it was spinning and I wanted to change the velocity, if it was already spinning in the vacuum void, and I wanted to change the velocity, how would I do that?
Well, you would exert a force by a rocket or whatever. You'd have to throw it, or you could obviously, if you could mechanically interfere it with some external thing.
So, do you have anything to show me that can back up what you're saying?
Yes, because the example I'm describing starts off not moving, and then it starts to move, so it's being accelerated. Its velocity is changing.
Again, I'm telling you, it's already moving, and I
No,
need
it's
to change
not.
its velocity.
Yeah, but the
No,
example.
in this
you
example,
asked
in the example that I'm referring to, Rumpus, the example I'm referring to.
You asked if something
can you
can
show me
change its
something?
velocity.
Can you show me something that's in motion that changes velocity in the vacuum of space? That's
But
all
it
I'm looking
starts
for.
off being right. So in other words, if it starts off stationary and then starts moving, that doesn't satisfy you. Is that right?
The reason why it doesn't satisfy me is because I know how it moved, Rumpus. It didn't move
No.
based on
If
the
it starts off
propulsion.
stationary
It
and then it starts to move, that's a
it
change of
removed because
velocity.
it pushed off the container of the walls, Rumpus, inside the vacuum. That's why it moved.
What? Well, no, it's not. It starts off stationary, then the rocket fires, and if we're talking about the Cody Lab one, where
It's a very, very small space, Rumpus. Any kind of. Okay, first of all, let's be honest here. You can't create a perfect atmosphere or a perfect vacuum. It ain't going to be removed of all atmosphere, number one. So that vial that he exploded had atmosphere in it. That atmosphere inside that vial was enough atmosphere to drive the propulsion of the rest of the vehicle.
No, it's not.
To change its velocity. Yes, it is.
Absolutely
100%. Absolutely. 100% it is. And if you're being disingenuous,
no,
this is
you're
how
just a
we
moron.
know.
You don't understand that.
This is how we know you're being disingenuous.
Because you don't
if
understand
you can show me something already in motion, that can change its velocity while it's in its trajectory in the vacuum of space, exercising Newton's second law, then I'll believe it.
Right. So your criteria is you need to have something moving and then to change the velocity. Okay.
According to Newton's second law, buddy, you need an acting outside force. Yep.
Yeah, that's Newton's second law is force is equal to mass times acceleration. So all we need is to see an acceleration, which is being provided by a force. So we're presuming that a rocket would satisfy that. So you want something to be moving already and then it to accelerate, which is a change of velocity, which I don't think you understood. Perhaps you now worked out that's what acceleration is. And you want a video on that. My God, but even though something not moving and then starting to move as an acceleration, it's just the same criteria. But okay, I don't have a video of that to hand where something's already moving. No.
Let me know when you do, bro. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Okay.
So
it's a very strange
which demonstration do you think you gave me this demonstration, this rocket in a vacuum chamber, Rumpus?
Yes, that one that doesn't move, but what it does do is demonstrate the force. So it's in a vacuum chamber, and that one that I linked to demonstrates the force that the exhaust gases going into a vacuum are exerting forwards, and it's not moving it, so it can actually measure the force. So it's demonstrating there's a force there, and it would accelerate if it wasn't up against I think it's a set of scales or something which are registering the force that the exhaust is generating.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Cody's Lab one wasn't happy. You weren't happy with the Cody's Lab, this thing rotating in a barrel for what reason?
Well, I was just going to talk about that one, but let me look at this one first. So, okay, it ignites. I mean, that does seem to put a force forward.
Yeah, well, exactly. Just conservation of momentum. And let's say there are two ways of proposing this. The way that you like, which is here, demonstrate there's a force there. But the normal way to do it is to talk about the conservation of momentum. Basically, if you like the bowling balls on a skateboard. If you're on a skateboard, super slippery skateboard.
Again, you guys are using an ad hoc explanation.
Nearly there. I had 4 words.
How much mass?
4 words.
How much resistance?
I had 4
how much
words
resistance
left in that sentence.
would that medicine ball have in a zero
Let me have
gravity
my last
environment?
4 words, please.
How much resistance would that medicine ball have in space?
Let me have my last 4 words, my sentence. So if you then throw away the ball, the skateboard goes the other way. That's a conservation of momentum principle. Go ahead. Now he does. Now he shuts up. Unbelievable.
Rumpus, what?
Unbelievable. You interrupt when
if you were to throw the medicine ball in space, how much resistance would that medicine ball offer you?
Well, you've delivered a certain amount of momentum by throwing away the bowling ball, and that same momentum would act on you going forward. So if you
We're floating in space.
Yes.
We throw away the medicine ball.
Yes.
Are we still gonna move like we're here on Earth?
You'd move better. You'd move more quickly because there's no air resistance.
So wait a second. The medicine ball has no weight to it whatsoever. It's weightless. It has no resistance in space.
Yeah, it has mass.
Tell me where you're getting Newton's third law. Tell me where you're getting Newton's third law from.
Right. We're talking about the conservation of momentum. Like I showed the equation last time I was here, and Brandon was actually familiar with it. He said he understood the conservation of momentum equation, which is that mv, mass times the medicine ball times the velocity you throw the medicine ball away, is going to equal the mass of the thing that's throwing it.
Again, Rumpus.
You
medicine ball is in space.
Halfway through a bloody equation, then.
It has no resistance in space.
It's the conservation of momentum. It's the fundamental principle of a rocket, and you interrupted me just as I was finishing, you little wank. So let's try it again. Let's try it again. Jesus Christ. So if you're in space and weightless, you still got mass. So for instance, I don't think you understand what
There's
mass is.
no resistance.
Here we go.
There's no resistance.
Let's see if you understand what mass is.
There would be no resistance.
Let's see if you understand what mass is.
There'd be no resistance,
I'm going to explain to you so you understand
what mass is. There'd be no resistance.
I would explain to you and you will understand.
There'd be no resistance, right?
Listen, and you will understand. Then you get your turn to speak. So imagine I throw, say, a tennis ball at a bowling ball and it hits it and it goes away at a certain velocity. Let's suppose I now throw that tennis ball and it hits a bus. Which do you think would go away faster, the bowling ball that the tennis ball hit or the bus?
Now, here's what we're doing, Rumpus. We're throwing a ball on a skateboard, right? We're not throwing a tennis ball at a big bus.
The principle of
here's the best part about it. There's no resistance to your ball.
If you answered my last question, you
would
be
no resistance to your school bus either. And the only velocity and trajectory that would give the ball is coming from your own muscles. The pressure from your own muscles.
If you answered my question,
the energy in is equal to the energy out, right?
If the question I just asked you, you would understand the conservation of momentum, which is the principle of a rocket. So try again. So if I throw a tennis ball and it hits a bowling ball, that will go away at a certain speed.
Does the ball have more resistance on Earth?
If I throw a tennis ball at a bus and it hits the bus, which one of those two would move away with a bigger velocity?
Again, does the ball have resistance here on Earth or resistance in space? Where does it have
resistance? You're using non-scientific terms. How about answering my
Third
question?
law. To push off of, right? I need to push off of something to get a reaction, right?
How about answering my question?
So again, how do I get resistance?
My question.
How do I get resistance from a weightless object?
Because I think when you think about it,
it has no weight. It has no mass to it. Nothing. It's empty. It's a void. It's empty.
And you have no insight into conservation of momentum. You won't answer my question. You're dodging and deflecting.
Rumpus. You're telling me that a ball on the ground is going to have the same properties as the ball in space.
If you won't interact
with my
point, there's no point in talking to you. George, is that you, George, trying to talk to me?
Rumpus, you're trying to tell me that the ball that people push off of is going to have the same resistance here on Earth as it will in space. It won't, Rumpus.
No, that wasn't my question.
It has no properties in space. It's void of any weight. Remember, it's anti-gravity. There's no downward vector to solids.
It's nothing to do with that. That's weight. That's weight, and it's got nothing to do with mass. Well, it has got it's the weight.
At the end of the day, Rumpus, there's no. If the density of the material you want to call mass has a weightless feature to it. If the density of the material is weightless, it has no resistance. It's the same as
conservation of momentum.
It's the same as entropy.
Nothing to do with weight. Nothing to do with weight.
There's no resistance.
If you answer the question,
mass would give it resistance if it had density to it. If you remove its weightlessness to it, it has no density to it. It has no mass. You can move it wherever you want.
If you answered my question, quick, John. If you answer my question, you would understand the principle of rocket. Go ahead, George.
I was just going to say, don't you well, of course you realize that if you satisfy all the conditions that they're asking for, you jump through all the hoops, then you're going to have to prove to them that the ejected mass from the rocket doesn't push against the ether band.
Thanks, George, for that contribution.
What the fuck, George?
Yes, so... But I think Brandon understands. So I think Flat Earth Data, you're in the peculiar position of being bottom of the class here, because Brandon clearly understands what I'm talking about. And if I were to ask Brandon that question, I suspect if he's prepared to admit that he understands.
More importantly, does Brandon understand my position? Brandon, do you understand my position?
I got to be honest, I was a little distracted, zoned out for a minute because of the chat. But what's the question?
Okay, Brandon.
So here's my position. It's not a question. Here's my position. Shut up, Rumpus.
I'm going to ask Brandon the question, and then we can take it from there.
Shut up, Rumpus. I'm in the middle of asking Brandon the question. My position is this.
I'm in the middle of asking Brandon the question. I was the one talking to Brandon. I was the one talking to Brandon. I was the one talking to Brandon. So Brandon,
I'm not going anywhere, guys.
I was asking the question. The question I asked that
So,
the flat
first of all,
earther wouldn't
Rumpus,
answer
do you
was,
understand my
if you're
position?
throwing a ball,
What's my
say a
position,
tennis
Rumpus?
ball, if you're
What's my
throwing a
position,
tennis
Rumpus?
ball, if you're throwing a tennis
Rumpus,
ball
what's my
and it
position,
hits
bro?
in space, you're floating in space, and you throw
You
a
don't want
tennis
to tell
ball,
my position, do
and
you?
you
I
throw
don't
a
think you
tennis
know my
ball,
position.
and you throw a tennis ball,
You don't
and
know
it
my
hits,
position.
and
That's
it
the
hits a
problem.
bowling ball, and then you throw the same tennis ball at the same velocity, and it hits a bus. Which one of those two objects do you think will move away faster, the bowling ball or the bus?
Neither one.
If I threw a tennis ball at a bowling ball and I threw a tennis ball at a bus with the same amount of force,
Velocity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which would equal the same amount of force in the end.
So they then collide. So the tennis ball hits the bowling ball, and then on the other case it hits a bus. Which one of those two objects is going to move away
the bowling
faster?
Ball.
Correct. Well done. I knew you'd understand this because you picked up other things
Okay.
earlier. So
you ready? You ready for mine?
So you
You
understand.
ready for mine?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so you guys are trying to get off by saying conservation of momentum is standing on a skateboard, grabbing a beam ball, throwing it away. As I throw away, that ball provides me resistance I can push off of, thereby propelling me on the board. This is your explanation for how things work in space.
Conservation of momentum, correct. And you've described it properly.
The best part about it, Rumpus, is what happens to that beam ball the higher we go up to it. Does it gain more resistance or lose resistance?
So I didn't
It
understand
maintains its mass.
What did you
Again,
say?
that's not the question. Does it maintain its resistance? Hold on. Does it maintain its resistance? Are you going to let me fucking finish?
What do you mean by
Brandon,
goes up?
Fuck.
What
Mute
did you mean
this
by
fuck.
goes up?
Mute this fuck.
What
Mute
do you
so I can
mean
get
by
my statement
goes
out.
up? I'm just trying to clarify. I'm not trying to stop you from making your point.
So, yeah,
I'm
you're trying to
understand your question.
Does the resistance of an object increase on Earth or decrease the higher you go up?
Oh, what you mean elevation, altitude? Right, no,
So
it doesn't make any difference.
as an object like a beanbag or beanball.
Globe model radius is long gone. Why are these clowns here daily pretending to still have one?
Good question, Godzilla37. Thank you for the $5 donation. And there was another super chat that I needed to read that I haven't gotten to because it's hard to get a word edgewise in with these guys, to be honest with you, and I'm just kind of letting them go for a minute. So space is fake, but NASA spends a shitload of their money building vacuum chambers to test rockets that they know won't work. And that was Why Kick a Moo Cow, number 855. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I understand. We're just asking questions and looking at the evidence that's provided. You know, we have a trust issue with NASA. So it's hard to believe anything they say, to be honest, Moo Cow. But thank you, man. And thank you, Godzilla37.
But then yet an object is weightless. Then an object becomes weightless, but yet it has more resistance in space or less resistance or the same.
You've just identified the difference.
Your mass is what, Rumpus?
You have identified.
Your mass is what, Rumpus?
You have identified.
Your mass is what, Rumpus? What's mass? What's mass?
I will make my point. You can ask me that after I finish my sentence. You've just identified the difference between mass and weight. Now you can ask me your question.
What's mass, Rumpus?
Mass is the resistance to being accelerated. So
okay, so it's not matter.
Correct.
Okay, so why is it defined as material matter?
It's not.
You just gave the definition
it's not.
for inertia.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. The whole point is mass is
inertia is the qualitative form of mass. So in other words, we say.
So you guys are conflating using an ad hoc explanation.
Really got to learn to take your turn. I was in 3 words into a sentence then, and it won't be a long.
You're claiming that your beanbag will have more resistance in space in a weightless environment. You guys are you're kidding me, right?
It won't be a long sentence, and then you can get a turn. So here we go. So can I just finish this sentence?
Go ahead, finish your sentence, then let's let Bob get in here.
I'm so busy struggling with this wanker who can't take turns like an adult. I've now forgotten what it was I was making the point of. So the difference between mass, that's right, we're talking about mass and inertia. Inertia is the qualitative property like colour. Mass is the quantitative form of inertia, say like the particular colour, like the frequency. So inertia is the qualitative property, and mass is the one that's measured in kilograms that we can put numbers to. You don't tend to put numbers to mass. You just say that's the behaviour, and mass is
adjective.
Mass is the quantitative property of inertia. Go ahead.
You just defined it as an adjective. So,
what has?
Yeah, you're talking about the mass of something. Yes, it's a property of an object. Yes, like colour. You have mass of something. You have the colour of something. You have the length of something. It is a property of substance. and it's the amount. Go ahead.
Okay, what's the word for resistance to acceleration?
That's inertia. That's inertia.
Inertia. So you define it pretty much as inertia?
Yes, it is the quantitative form of inertia. So just like said with color, you say this has got a color, and then you say the particular color. So inertia is like the word color, and then the particular color is the particular color, and inert mass is the quantitative thing which you can put numbers to of the amount of inertia. I know it's slightly confusing to some people.
You can't put
It's not
confusing
at all.
I don't know where to start. Has, like,
Well,
except for like on a computer.
try
maybe.
learning some
Bob,
physics.
your mic's a little low, but go ahead, man.
Okay, that seemed like kind of a wonky analogy, but I have a question about their pretend land outer space. Someone mentioned a bus, and I'm wondering if I was in space and a bus was in space, and I was right next to the bus, okay, just like a couple inches, and I lifted up my hand and put my hand against the bus, and I just pushed. Okay,
excellent. That's a really good example.
Would I move, or would the bus move?
Very good question. You've been thinking. You would both move. Oh my God. You would.
Go ahead.
Can I answer the Brian? You can go next. Let me answer the goddamn question, then you can go.
Yeah, my bad. Go ahead. Bro.
Right. So you would both move, and you would move about the center of mass of the system. And let's suppose the bus was 10 times heavier than you were. You would move away at 10 times the speed of the bus. Okay? So that's the conservation of momentum in action. The mass times the velocity, which apparently is an equation that Brandon knows. If you multiply the mass by the velocity, both objects will have what's called momentum, and they will both have the product. So if you multiply your mass, say you're 1 kilogram, well, although you're not, obviously, imagine you're 1 kilogram, and you moved away at 10 meters per second, and the bus was 10 times more, so let's say it was 10 kilograms, it would move away at 1 meter per second. But the center of mass would remain at 0, and that's what the conservation momentum means. And it's a well-known established...
Okay.
So
wouldn't weight be resistant to acceleration too? So you're just basically grabbing energy and weight.
Well, weight's on top of that. So weight is a force caused by the attraction due to gravity. So we're trying to eliminate that as a complication. We're trying to do this in space away from the force of gravity.
Hold on, man. If mass is a resistance to acceleration, then it is also a force. What are you even talking about, dude?
No, mass is not a force. It's the resistance to a force. That doesn't mean to say it is a force. We call it the resistance. It's a peculiar word. But the force divided by the acceleration that you get. So if you push on something and it accelerates away from you with a particular speed, the mass of the thing that you've pushed is the force you've applied divided by the acceleration of the object, and that equals mass, which is Newton's second law, which is what flat earth data is referring to. And using that equation, you can work out the mass of something. And indeed, that's how they work out the mass of the astronauts. Because they don't have gravity on the ISS, they've got no means of using the weight, because there's no weight. So the only thing they can measure is mass. And guess how they do it? They apply a spring to apply a force. See how quickly the astronauts accelerate. They've got a special chair for this. And by dividing the acceleration into the force they've applied, they work out the mass of the astronauts to measure their mass. And in space, the same thing. We're talking about buses.
All right, man. All right, I hear you. But look, so something that's resisting acceleration, you're calling not a force. Okay, you're calling that not a force.
Well, okay.
But as long as we're on, here's my question. So as long as we're on Earth, we could just use weight, right? We don't need mass.
No, you do. Well, imagine that I'm pushing against the mass, but it's also a spring on the mass. So we've now got two things.
Quit reading your page, bro. Quit reading your page and answer the question. As long as we're on Earth.
Brian, please let me answer.
You're just going to read your page again, bro.
Brian, let me answer, and then you can come back to me. So what you have to worry about is net forces on things. So unfortunately, flat earthers can never cope with more than one thing at a time. And with something like the resistance to acceleration, if I have a spring on this ball that I'm pushing away, so let's imagine that we're talking about a situation with the bus in space or a ball.
Well, you're not answering the question, bro. The question was...
Brian, I'm nearly there.
Bro, you're reading your page again.
I'm nearly there, Brian.
You just read it, bro.
Brian, I'm nearly there, and then you get your turn to speak. So imagine, as well as being me pushing on the bus, there's a spring.
Nothing about my turn to speak was a question, and your turn to speak is repeating an essay.
I'm so close to finishing. If you think of the spring as being like gravity,
Your finish is
Brian,
not answering my question,
so
bro.
close, and then you can start
God dang
to
it,
speak.
go ahead.
Right. So on Earth, you've got the additional problem. You've got a spring acting on the thing. If you're pushing up, now if you're pushing aside, so Brian, you don't have to worry about gravity. If you're pushing on a skating rink that's super smooth, then if you're pushing horizontally, then you can forget about gravity, and then you can just worry about mass. So the thing I talked about the bus. If you're on a skating rink and you pushed a bus, that would have exactly the same. You can then just worry about the conservation of momentum. But you talked about going up, and there's an extra spring. So if you want to eliminate gravity, do things horizontally like the Cavendish experiment. Go ahead, Brian.
I just wondered yes or no. So well, George said that we don't really need we don't need mass. It's just as well as weight until we leave the planet, like on the moon and in orbit.
I have no idea what you're talking about, and George has certainly not said that in this hangout. Or at least I've not heard that statement.
In other words, man. In other words, so if we don't need the mass equation, basically. If we're
what do you mean by mass equation? Sorry, what mass equation? What are you talking about? You're talking about Newton's...
F equals ma. F equals ma, any of them. Yeah.
Well, we do. Mass always exists. It exists in space and exists on the ground. You always need it.
I got one other thing to add, man. See what you think about this. The Cavendish experiment is like... So they had to come up with a way to counter the Earth's pull. All right, no. I'm going to give you that. I'm going to give you that for right now. Okay.
But no. Hold on. Sorry to interrupt you, Brian. I'm really sorry to interrupt you. But the whole point of the Cavendish experiment is it's conducted horizontally, so that the attraction due to the Earth's gravity is eliminated. If you understand that if you have two dimensions, vertical and horizontal, nothing you do in the vertical dimension affects the horizontal, and nothing you do in the horizontal affects the vertical. So that's why the Cavendish experiment is very important that you align horizontally.
Yeah. Were you aware that that's the same apparatus as the guy used to come up with Coulomb's law?
I am indeed.
Okay, and why don't they vary the lead? Okay, lead is very active. It's what they use in just about all automotive batteries.
Also, just to mention too, Faraday.
Yeah, but it's grounded to the ground. They take
Faraday did the same thing. Faraday did the same thing with gold. Faraday used the same contraption as Cavendish to see if there's any gold attracting to gold. So look at Faraday's first examples. He used he used the Cavendish example, but a way more sensitive device that Faraday used. He found no mass attracting mass between any gold particle or any of that stuff. You can go take a look at his experiment.
That's just gibberish.
I'll tell you the name of the experiment in his book. You can go look at it yourself. He used the same Cavendish experiment, but he had gold in it.
A much better version of it.
It's written in his book.
Can I just
gold
finish?
Does not attract gold.
Can I just finish my sentence? Okay, you give us a citation for that in a second. There are labs, Brian, that actually specialise in doing Cavendish-like experiments, and they're much more accurate, and they do a sort of multiple sort of Cavendishy thing. And I can give you the link to the papers and the lab that does this. And and you use lead because it's not magnetic. If you used iron or something, then you can get magnetic. And so
it doesn't matter if it's magnetic, Rufus. If it's magnetic, it doesn't matter. It's still.
Well, I thought you were saying
it's interactive. Take two lead plates. Listen. Take two lead plates.
Quick question,
Brian. Put them together
and
put a meter on them.
Why do you object to them using lead again? Why do you object to them using lead in the Cavendish experiment?
Because lead is one of the best things they use. Okay, in every automotive battery, you got lead plates. You got lead plates. And then let me finish something one time.
Okay.
To increase the amps, they add like lead oxide or sponge lead, whatever you want to call it, to the positive plates. And then they add they add sponge lead to the negative plates, and they add lead dioxide to the positive plates, right? And the reason they do that is to increase the amps. If you take two lead plates and you put them together with a piece of paper in between them, you're going to get a charge. So I mean is it's very interactive.
But Brian, that only happens in a chemical reaction. There are no chemical reactions going on here, and they don't.
You don't even need chemicals.
You do. Well, you do. That's
what you can put it in the ocean. You can take two plates and just put it in the ocean.
But Brian, yes, because there's salt in the water, Brian. That's a chemical reaction.
Yeah.
We haven't got a chemical reaction going on here.
Well, let me say something. One more thing. Okay, I'm to understand that they take a copper wire, and the constant lead balls in that experiment, they take and they ground it they ground it to the earth. And if you know anything, you know that you got one half of a charge. If you take a wire and you put it to the ground, that's how they used to power the old telegraphs. But putting a wire into the ground. So if you basically have a ball in the atmosphere, okay, and then you have a ball grounded.
Brian,
so
that was only because
you're creating electromagnetism.
But no, Brian, that was because there's power to the rail above it. The whole point about putting a lot of contact between the balls and the earth is to make sure there's no electrostatic charge on those things. So you're discharging them. They're not generating
but what you're doing
power.
is you're creating a potential, man.
No.
You're
You're discharging any potential. You're discharging. Are you familiar with these electrostatic things, these balls which have charge? And the way you discharge them is you put a contact between them and the ground.
Static, Rumpus.
Yes,
you're
exactly.
Discharging static, but you're not discharging the potential.
We are.
The electromagnetic potential.
But Brian, the things you're talking about, the telegraph rails you're talking about, Brian, those have batteries on them. There are no batteries on these lead balls. You're just discharging them to make sure they don't have any static on them, which is what electrostatic charge. That's why you call it electrostatic. Static is short for electrostatic charge. So they're discharged to make sure you don't get any of those sorts of effects. No,
I'll give you that. Okay, that will get rid of the static in the car.
Electromagnetic is very, very different, Brian. That's very, very different. That's got nothing to do with this at all.
That's what you're giving it, bro. You're giving it electromagnetic potential. When you ground one of the balls.
No. There's no such thing as electromagnetic potential, Brian. You have electrostatic potential when you have magnetic force or flux. You don't have electromagnetic potential. You have electrostatic potential, and you have magnetic fields and forces. You do not have electromagnetic potential. So you've got confused there. Electromagnetic is all to do with light and radio waves. That's got absolutely nothing to do with this.
Rumpus, listen to me. If I take a wire and I put it in the ground, okay, with a piece of metal or something, I ground that wire, okay?
Yeah,
and then all I got to do, okay, listen, all I got to do is make contact with something else.
And that discharges.
The closer I get it, the more charge I'm going to get. I'm going to get
it discharges it, Brian. Brian, you're familiar with cars? Sometimes have these little things that come out of the back.
I'm going to make a video, bro, to demonstrate. Everybody knows this, bro.
No, you're wrong, Brian. Brian, are you familiar with cars? Are you familiar with some cars? There used to be a little add-on for cars, an accessory, which you put on the back of your car to drop onto the ground because the tires are insulators to discharge any static your car has. And that's the purpose of these. Well, hold on, let me finish. The wires on those balls, you make sure they haven't got any static by shorting them to earth to make sure that doesn't get involved in any of the traction.
Yes.
Okay. Why don't they use something that's more resistant to static? But listen, have you ever heard of earth battery?
Well, metals are.
Have you ever...
Metals. The whole point is that metal, if you have an insulator, if you made it out of plastic that's an insulator, then you can't discharge it in the way I just described. You have to discharge it in a much more uniform way. That's why they use...
The only thing they could do better than that is maybe use lithium and ground one of the...
Brian,
was not done.
You want the densest metal you can get, and lead is one of the densest you can get because you need the maximum force between the two objects, the two balls. So you make it you can make out of gold would do, or mercury, or uranium would do, except that's radioactive, or something, or osmium. You want the most dense material. Lead is, pretty dense. It's good enough and cheap and easy. And also, you can make
concrete's way cheaper.
Yeah, but it's not as dense as lead, though, is it, Brian?
Why do they not vary? Why don't they vary?
Hold on, Brian. Brian, is lead more dense than concrete?
Yeah, it's heavier, man.
Exactly. It's more dense. It's more dense. If I have 10 tons of concrete and 1 ton of lead, I've got more weight. So it's the density that matters because you've got to fit a small space.
You spent 10 times as much money, though. I will give you that. But you spent a lot more money on the lead.
So the point is, you need a lot of mass in a small space, and you can only get that with dense materials. So that's why they pick on lead. It's also cheap, and you can also make it spherical easier because you can work it's a soft metal. Whereas if you're doing with osmium or something,
Cavendish an experiment, bro. But I want to see. This is what I want to see. I want to see the Cavendish. I tried it one time, and I never could get it to stop. Okay, but I didn't put that much effort into it like Blue is doing.
Well, exactly. You need to do what Blue's doing. You need to do what Blue's doing to get the results. So you must realize.
Did you know?
He's putting a lot more effort than you did.
There's got to be a. Did you know that if you take a wire,
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
I have a question for you, Rumpus.
Let Brian finish his
sentence. I have a question for you. I have done this Cavendish experiment.
Brian was asking something. You're interrupting him. Just let him finish, and you can go next.
Brian was in the middle of the sentence.
I'll back off.
Yeah, he just told me I could go.
I got one other thing to say. Go ahead, Data. I'll yield for a second, man.
Okay.
So Rumpus, I've done this Cavendish experiment, and you know what I noticed?
it doesn't matter what weights I put on the end of the torsion bar. The torsion bar will rotate no matter what.
No,
So
well,
explain
not
that
if you've
to
done
me.
it. Not if you've done it properly.
Rumpus, I've done it. I've taken
No, you've done it bad.
I've taken
No.
a long copper tube. I've suspended it from the ceiling. I've put different cylinder shapes on the end of the wires. The only difference that I noticed is oscillation is quicker or slower. That's the only difference.
Yeah, but that means you haven't done it properly.
The oscillation, listen, the oscillation is irrelevant because it doesn't matter what I put on to the ends of it. It will oscillate regardless. So explain to me why.
And I'll tell you why.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you go and see some of the YouTube videos of people trying to do this and say teachers have done it in a room, just merely moving and entering the room and causing a waft of air causes, because it's so sensitive if you've done it properly. Let me finish my goddamn sentence. Let me finish my goddamn sentence and then you can speak.
I was aware of that, Rumpus.
Let me finish my
Still
sentence. Then
doesn't change
your
the
turn.
factor.
Try and take turns, you twat. So the mere act of entering the room is enough to make these things oscillate. It is incredibly difficult to avoid the problems of air movement. And so people like Blue are going to great lengths. Go ahead,
If it's so delicate, how come it doesn't detect the Earth's motion if it's so damn delicate?
Because the Earth's motion is constant and doesn't change, whereas if you enter a room, you've caused a change.
So the Earth's motion is not an acceleration, moving and rotating?
But it's an acceleration down, as I told you earlier. Providing your things are orientated horizontally, the force of gravity is irrelevant.
Okay, so there's no inertia at all from the Earth. It's not spinning. It's not pretty. If the Earth slammed on brakes, what would happen to everything on the Earth?
Oh, if the Earth stopped rotating, we'd all be flung. If you're on the equator, you'd be flung 1,000 miles an hour off the Earth.
Okay, so that means it's got momentum. Okay, it's got velocity. I want to say.
Yes.
Okay, so if the Cavendish is, if you get the different weights at the equator, if you're detecting different weights at the equator than you are at the North Pole, then that means there's some kind of force. Okay.
Well, indeed, there is,
but
Brian.
Why the Cavendish? Let me finish. I'm almost done.
Okay.
Why wouldn't the Cavendish be able to sense if it's that delicate? It can get 1/50 millionth of the gravity, okay, by percentage. Why couldn't it feel the Earth's motion?
Right, because it's a constant, and the Earth's force, the force of gravity, is downwards, and that's a vertical force. And as I told you 4 times, the Cavendish experiment is orientated horizontally, and no vertical force is going to cause any change in horizontal forces. If you understood physics and dimensions, you'd understand that was a fundamental principle.
Well, if you did it anywhere but the equator, then you should get some
No. The force of gravity and the force of being flung out are in the vertical axis. Both the centrifugal force and the force of gravity are acting in the vertical direction, which means hold on, Brian. Because it's acting in a vertical direction and the horizontal is at 90 degrees, that in another dimension, those vertical forces cannot have any effect on horizontal forces. Go ahead.
Rumpus, what about the supposed Coriolis force?
Well, it's not moving with respect to the Earth's surface, so that's zero. You only get a Coriolis force if you're moving relative to the non-inertial reference frame. So if you're stationary, like the thing is, your apparatus is stationary.
Okay.
There is no Coriolis force.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I come in here?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, Rumpus. We spoke about a bus now. I have no idea what the weight of a bus is, but let's just say
mass of the bus.
Okay, the mass of the bus. Okay, we're in a vacuum. I weigh 10 kilograms, and the bus weighs, I don't know, 10.
Say 100. Make it 10 times bigger.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if there's a spring that's got its potentials squashed between us and it lets go, the bus will move and I will move, but I will move a lot further than the bus.
Right. So I've got. Sorry, you're trying to include the concept of weight and gravity in this example. So I'm not.
No, not gravity. Gravity is
spring. Okay, so you got a spring. So where's this spring again? Sorry.
Between me and the bus. Okay, I weigh 10 grams.
So you're holding on one end of the spring and you've attached the other spring to the bus, and then you do what?
And the spring then lets go. I get ejected one way, and the bus gets ejected.
So the spring's under tension, is it? Because obviously if you're in a stable situation, the spring would pull you until it became into its zero newton. and then you'll be in that position.
No,
So what's your starting position? Is the spring in tension, or is it compressed, or what?
the spring is compressed. Okay.
Oh, it's compressed now. Oh, spring's compressed. Okay, right. Got it. Good. Okay.
Okay, and we've got a bus that's 1,000 kilograms, and I'm only 10 kilograms.
Okay.
And the spring lets go. The bus will shift minutely, but I will go quite a lot further.
100 times further. Yeah, because the difference in your masses was 100 times, and therefore you will, because conservation of momentum says that the mass times the velocity is going to be a constant for both of you. So as your mass is 10 times less, 100 times less, your velocity will be 100 times more. And the mass, okay.
Now, assuming that the spring has got no mass to it, if I wasn't there and the spring was next to the bus and the spring sprung out, would the bus move then?
No, it wouldn't, because you can't exert. You can't exert forces on yourself.
Now, that's my point. How does thrust work in a combustion engine in a vacuum of space?
Because it's chucking mass out the back. You're actually parting company with a load of mass. Just like a bullet. Nearly there. Let me finish. So just like when you're firing a gun. Can I just make my point? Just make my point. Nearly there. Left lane. I'll get you after this. If you fire a machine gun, you're firing mass out of the gun, and therefore the gun is going to have recoil going backwards. You're losing mass. So similarly, So for instance, if you tried to push against yourself in space and you wiggled around in space, you couldn't move at all ever. You'd have to throw off some clothes or some shoes or throw a ball out of your pocket. That's the only way you can ever make it, because the conservation of momentum says that you cannot, with the same mass not moving, you can't generate any change of direction of you. You have to be part within a mass.
Robert, do you understand my argument? If I'm not there, the bus doesn't shift. If there's nothing there, how can thrust move a rocket?
You didn't listen to what I said. If you wanted to move in space, you could take your shoes off and throw them. And with a rocket, do you understand the fuel is incredibly heavy? In a rocket, the fuel is 90%.
So wait a second, Rumpus. You're telling us the resistance of the throwing your shoe
and then you can speak.
is enough
I'm talking to
power
Mark,
to change
then
your
you can
velocity in
speak.
space?
Then you can speak. So Mark,
Really?
you understand that something like the Saturn V rocket is massive, and 90% of the mass of the Saturn V rocket is fuel. So if I've got the mass of the Saturn V fuel and I throw it out from me, I've got it in my pocket, say, it's obviously much bigger than my pocket, but if I throw that away from me, then I will go in the opposite direction. That's all a rocket is, except that the fuel is being burnt, and therefore it goes away much more quickly.
Okay.
Going back to Mark's example of it, the spring is not attached to the bus; it is simply loaded, right?
Let me come back on that.
understand his spring thing, yeah.
Okay, let me come back on that. There's 9 different forms of energy. One is potential energy. When a spring is compressed, it's potential energy. The amount of energy within unburnt fuel is also potential energy.
Yep.
I still feel that the rocket will not shift unless it's got something to push against.
Well, no, but do you understand the machine gun analogy? If I'm firing bullets at a machine gun, I get a recoil.
I think your analogy is wrong, though, Rumpus.
Yeah, hold on. But do you understand? Let's first of all start off when we do agree, and then we can see where we disagree. So you do accept, if I'm firing a machine gun and firing bullets at one end, I'm going to go away due to the conservation momentum in the opposite direction. Do you accept that?
As long as the bullets have got some sort of resistance to push against.
Well, it's the mass. No. This isn't a vacuum. So imagine I'm in a vacuum and I fire a machine gun. And I'm firing lots of bullets, like a really, super duper machine gun, firing out lots of bullets, really heavy bullets, and they're going away from me. I'm going to, in a vacuum chamber, I'm going to push the other way due to conservation momentum, aren't I? Or perhaps you don't accept the recoil.
No, well, is it not the same example?
Hold on, but do you accept that analogy? Do you accept that would happen? And then we can move from that, and then we can see where we disagree. So I'm trying to get to a point of agreement between us. So
Okay.
do you accept you get recoil with a machine gun firing bullets in a vacuum chamber?
No, I don't accept that.
Right, okay, there's our problem then. Okay. So would
And
you
the reason why I don't accept that is because you've already said to me that a spring that's got potential energy next to a bus that's pushing at nothing, the bus won't shift.
Well, okay. Well, let's go back to my simple example. So, would you accept if I'm on a skateboard and I've got a bowling ball and I throw that away from me? I'll go in the opposite direction.
Where is the skateboard? Is it
In a vacuum chamber. In a vacuum chamber, I'm on a skateboard and I throw a bowling ball away from me. Am I going to go in the opposite direction?
But you've got two things there. You've got a bowling ball and you. I'm saying
Yeah,
a butt,
but
a
do you
spring,
accept that? Hold on,
nothing else.
Mark. I'm trying to get to a point of agreement. Do you accept that?
Why would he accept it, dude?
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Where's
Please, Mark,
vacuum at
do
here
you-
on Earth?
I was gonna-
Okay,
Where
let's
is the
get to a
example
point
of a
agreement,
vacuum and a
Mark.
skateboard and a
Mark,
ball?
let's
Come
get to
on.
a point of agreement, and then we can see where we diverge. If you accept, do you accept that if I'm in a
A
vacuum,
point of agreement to agree with your supposition, dude?
Mark, please, please. You can I'll give you have all the time in the world about flat Earth data, but I would like to talk to Mark for a moment. Mark, so if I'm in a vacuum chamber,
Rumpus, you've introduced me on a skateboard and a bowling board. That's three things. I'm talking to you.
No, it's not. Okay, imagine you are the skating board with a spring on it. Then, if you don't like you being on it, then imagine that there's a skateboard with a spring on it, and then it flings out a bowling ball in one direction. Do you accept in a vacuum chamber that the skateboard will go in the other direction?
And what's the spring compressed against?
Against the ball. So I've got the ball and the spring stuck to one another with a little, perhaps a cable around it to hold it together, and then I could draw this. Let me draw this because we're having a problem. Obviously,
I get what you're saying.
Well, let me make it absolutely clear. So there's absolutely no possible, because I don't like there to be anything. I know you try and you're an honest seeker for truth, and so
Is the bowling ball the same weight as?
Doesn't matter. Okay, so can you see my screen? Am I broadcasting? I think I'm broadcasting. Am I not? Yes, I am. Right. So
what screen?
So if you share my screen, so let's imagine. So here's the floor. Here is my skateboard, rather poorly done. I'll try and. So there's my skateboard.
Is this the water jet skateboard again?
It is something similar to that, yeah. So right, so here we go. There's my skateboard.
Oh, that was priceless, Brandon.
And
yeah,
here we have
worth a second look.
Jolly good. I'm glad I'm entertaining you. So there is, and I now need. Let's put a spring in there. So let's insert a spring. I've got one. Let's see if I can just find a spring for a moment. Sorry for delay. I'm hoping to find a spring in here. Stock illustration. Spring. Come on, let's have a spring. You bastard thing. Spring. Damn it, I'll have to draw one. Okay, sorry about that. I'll get a spring. Oh, actually, I've got one. If you give me 2 seconds, I've got one in another document.
Rumpus, your hard work.
Let me draw it. And I'll just draw one in. So here's a spring.
I can still see bees.
Right. So there's. You can't see my screen. Is that what you're saying? Sorry, you saying?
No, I can see it, but I can see bees and bunnies.
Flowers.
Right. Okay. So there we go.
Those were so cute. Those bees.
So. Right, jolly good. I'm glad you fine. Right, so there is our situation, and I've got a little cord between. I've drawn the little cord between here and here. So there's my cord wrapping around the ball. It's another little thing. Oh, damn it! Didn't mean to make that join, you bastard. Let's do that again. So I've got a little cord round that. I'll give that another colour so we all know what we're talking about. Right, so that cord is holding the ball in place and holding the spring is compressed.
Yeah, potential energy. Yeah.
And I now cut this by some means, and it's going to exert a force on the ball this way. The ball's then going to shoot out this way. And that, do you accept that?
Rumpus, this is a strawman argument.
No, it's not. If we can agree on this, then we can agree on the rest, because I'll then show you how this is identical to what we're talking about. So do you accept that if that goes out there, then this will go in the opposite direction?
Rumpus, I can see why you.
Please say yes or no. Do you accept that if the bowling ball's going this way, this will go the other way?
I don't accept it because this is not.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Oh my God. How can you not accept that?
Because this is not what I was suggesting.
I know, and it may not be what you're suggesting, but do you accept what I'm saying about this particular scenario?
But can you see how
we've got a bigger problem? But if you do accept it, then we can move on from this. So then I can then demonstrate this is exactly like the other scenarios, but we haven't got that far yet because you haven't agreed.
Let's write that down. This is exactly like the others.
I can't remember which scenario which we were discussing. This is like the bus scenario. So imagine if you want to in space, you could then replace this spring, and then you could put a bus in here. You could say, right, here's a bus in space, and we've got a spring between us to compress, and then we've got a cord between us. like this. And then what happens when I break the cord and the spring expands? And then I'll be able to demonstrate to you the U will go as the ball here will go one way and the bus will go the other. So that's why it's identical.
Rumpus, you're not being honest with.
Oh my God! Don't
wait a minute.
Mark, you're letting yourself down here.
Can I get a little clarification here, and then I'll hand it back over to you, Mark. So you've got this. Can you move that green box for a second, please? So you've got this pink ball attached to a spring attached to the little cart here. You're going to push the ball in and then let it go. And as the ball goes to the right, the cart is going to go to the left, you think?
Absolutely. Do you not accept that?
Yes, you've already got the ball attached to the skating board.
Let me just deal with Brandon first. Let's quickly finish off with Brandon and I'll come back to you.
It's not. So Brandon, is it attached to the cart or is the ball separate from the cart? So it's going to push the ball back.
So the ball is separate from the cart. It's just only it's only being pushed on by the spring. Yeah, sorry, if I can make that clear.
No, that's,
put it totally to the right of the cart.
So the spring is not attached. The spring is only attached at this end here. So I can make that clear. So the spring is only attached there, and it's just pushing on the spring
so
on the
board. It's pushing against the inertia of the ball to go forward.
Yeah, so I've got this cord here. It's holding it in place. It's stopping. So this spring is incredibly compressed. I haven't perhaps drawn it super compressed, but it is. It's really compressed. I've pushed. Okay, let's perhaps deal with it. I've actually. Okay, let's do it. Let's wind it up so we all understand what's going on. Then, so let's start off the ball. Let's imagine the spring's natural extension is that. Okay. I come along and I go. Oh, push that. Push the spring in. There we go. And then to hold it in place, I put this cord on it. Right. I now snap this string. The spring will expand. It'll push this way, and the cart will go the other way.
Okay, I accept that now.
Oh, thank God for that. Jesus Christ, I didn't just waste 10 minutes of my life.
No, okay. Now, listen. Okay, listen, Rumpus. We've got the spring.
Exactly the same scenario as the bus in space, Mark.
It's not. You've got the spring, and you've got the ball, but you've got no cart. Let go of the spring. Will the ball move?
Sorry, can you say that again, please?
Well, what I described to you was a spring next to the bus without any cart.
Okay, let's get rid of the. Okay, let's get rid of that. Let's just hold on. Let's do the completely new scenario with just the spring. Let's get this down here.
The spring compressed next to the ball,
and I've got a bus here somewhere. Oh, bugger!
No, you don't need to go to.
I do, because it seems to me, unless I get every detail in there, there's some problem you find somewhere with something part of the.
No,
right,
you're not. Hey,
okay, here we go. We'll have that. There we go. Here's a bus that'll do as a bus substitute. So there we go. So the spring is attached to the Volkswagen here, and you are here not attached to that. And I've come along and I've pushed you manually in space. I've come along and I've done exactly the same thing as I did before, except that I've pushed you here and I've put Mark in here and I've tied him to this thing. I've said, Brian, Mark, I'm going to contain you in this. I've put this in there. You're stuck with this spring pressing against you. And then I come along later and I then say, right, I'm releasing that. And then the spring will now extend out like this, and it'll push you this way, and it'll push the bus that way.
That was my initial thing. Now get rid of the purple disc, compress the spring against the bus, and let the spring go. Will the bus move?
Well, no. Hold on. It'll move if I have the thing not restrained and I start pushing this. If I come along here now, start pushing this, then that is immediately going to push that way.
No.
Carry on going away.
Rumpus,
something's got to be keeping it in place.
Rumpus, you've got the spring compressed from the right and the left, not just from the right and the left.
But it's going to push away. There's nothing holding this in place. It's going to move. There's nothing stopping this from moving away. If I apply a force here, then if I got a hand, bloody hell, I need a hand now. Oh, if I got to,
no hand.
No, I need it. No, because we've got to. If you've got to push it, if you've got to compress it, you've got to apply a force. So to compress
on both ends of the spring, left and right.
Well, okay. Okay, right. So, okay. So what you're saying? So if I have my hand here, so let's get rid of this, and I have my other hand here, and I compress the spring between my hands. Okay. Now, how am I going to get this in here without me releasing? Immediately, I release that away. Then there's going to be a force exerted by the spring that's going to force that away and me away.
Hang on. Let's compress the spring left and right.
Okay, which I can only do by putting my both hands on the side of the spring.
Okay.
So now it's compressed.
Okay, and now put it next to your bus.
Okay, well, I bring the bus in, and I'm resting. Now I'm about to release, and I make it go in contact with the spring, and then I release my left hand. Now, this is going to shoot my here.
Both hands, not just the left hand.
Okay, right, if I remove both hands, then only it will extend, but the spring will, okay, because the mass of this, okay, so if I now remove both hands, then because we're now in a situation where this is going to extend, so it'll push on that, but it'll be so tiny, and the mass of this will then shoot off like that. And this will only move a very little bit.
No, not the spring. We're talking about the energy of the.
You just told me. Hold on. You just asked me. Hold on. You just said I had the spring here. I've compressed it, and then I rest the spring up against the bus, but I'm still holding it by a little bit of it with my other hand. So it's touching the bus and it's touching my hands. And then you told me to move that away, and immediately that will happen because the conservation of momentum says that this will then extend. So it'll exert a force, and this will move because this is 100 times faster. This will move 100 times more quickly away.
But there's no resistance on the right-hand side of the spring, so why would the bus move?
Hey, Mark,
because there's tension.
For what it's worth,
because
I understand what you're asking.
You've just shot yourself in the foot, my friend. You just said the bus will virtually not move, and the spring will fire. Hang on. Let me explain. The spring. I understand your point. Okay. My expansion of it is that you've shot yourself in the foot because that spring will shoot off very quickly. The bus will virtually not move. Now, if you convert that to a spaceship, the same thing. The gas will shoot out the back, and the ship will virtually not move. Ergo, your propulsion in space, being able to zoom along at outrageous speeds, is virtually debunked.
Okay, you've made. Hold on. I'd really like to answer this point. Making good points. Hold on. I really would want to get to. Sorry, Mark. I'll come back to you really quickly. Let me just quickly make the point. Is as I keep on saying, guess what? The fuel is the Volkswagen bus. It weighs to the comparison to the thing that's launched into space.
Rumpus, you're not ejecting 1,000 kilos of fuel in one big splash.
That's what a rocket is. It's 90% fuel that's getting shot out the back. That's why
we're not in 1 microsecond.
Well, that's why rockets don't shoot up instantly. They go, Saturn V rocket starts off slowly, but you're chucking out so much mass at such a high velocity that it's like chucking out Volkswagen buses every nanosecond.
That's because it's got a launch pad. When it gets into the vacuum.
No difference. It's the mass of the fuel, which is by 90%, by far and away the biggest mass component, and you're chucking it out the back at an incredible tens of thousands of miles an hour. You're chucking out the weight of a Volkswagen bus probably every millisecond.
Okay, listen, Rumpus. If I have 1 kilogram,
I'm sorry, you're burning a ton of fuel every millisecond. Is that what you're claiming?
I'll tell you what.
A ton of fuel every millisecond. And how long does it burn for?
I will go along. I'll tell you what. I'll go and find out exactly how much it is, if you like. If you want me to get the exact figures,
So you're just talking out the top of your head, mate.
No, you don't understand the concept, and I'm now going to go and try and quantify it for you. Okay?
That's good. Okay, go ahead. Do that, Rumpus. 1 kilogram of fuel represents 1 kilogram of expansion, doesn't it? It doesn't gain any mass.
No, there's an explosive. It's an explosive reaction.
Actually, guys, here I'm reading that the Saturn V supposedly, and I have no reason to doubt this because that F1 engine is freaking just unbelievable. That it gobbled up 20 tons, 40,000 pounds of fuel per second.
There we go.
Here's my question, though. So it says, okay, 20 tons, 40,000 pounds. And
so who's
it produced 7.5 million pounds of thrust.
Who was the twat who was disputing this? I can't remember. Who was it?
What?
It was a twat.
How much?
having a go at me about this, and now so then when you see the fact,
don't call me a twat.
There we go. Yeah, there's the twat. So there you go. So I've just demonstrated you're a moron, and the facts support.
All right.
Yeah, but when he was being quite abusive, you see, he's talking. So you get it back. You see, you're wrong, and you don't, and no doubt you won't accept you're wrong. Even though
would you like me to be abusive? I'm very capable of being abusive, but I was just challenging you.
I'm with a dog here.
And you were wrong, weren't you? How about accepting you were wrong?
Rumpus, you're
No, I still doubt those numbers, to be honest. How long's the burn? How long is the burn for this rocket? Like, if you're saying 20, what is it? 20 tons? A second?
Yeah, the first stage. I think it's about. Was it something like 2 minutes or something? I think the first stage lasts something like that. I think it's 2 minutes. Something like 2 minutes. Anyway, but Brendan, you were trying to say another point. I think. While F. Evangelist thinks on that, I think Brandon, you were trying to get back to me on something. Or Mark, if not Mark, you were trying to get back to me on something.
It's divided into so many different.
Well, okay. Which bit do you want to go back? We're talking about the two hands and the Volkswagens coming out the back and the spring. If you want to get back to that concept, I can go back to this if you like.
Well, the conservation of energy is that.
Hold on. Remember, we're talking about the conservation of momentum, which is slightly different, Mark.
Okay, momentum. If a 2-ton car hits a 1-ton car and it's traveling at 30 miles an hour, the 1-ton car shifts off at 60 miles an hour. Is that correct?
That's if you have an elastic collision. You don't normally have an elastic collision in real world things.
Okay. So, assuming there's no other.
Imagine two bouncy balls. I mean, imagine two very good bouncy balls that are almost perfectly elastic. Then yes, if you had a one bouncy ball that was 1 ton, and you had another bouncy ball that was 2 tons, then the one bouncy ball coming along and hitting it, say at 30 miles an hour, then it would actually bounce back. You then have you
don't need to go into the fine details of it.
Okay, so in other words, the basic principle you're talking about would be the sort of principle you're talking about. The point is the conservation of momentum, which is what Brandon understood. Let me show you the equation. I mean, let's make sure you know the equation.
I think you're trying to swamp me into too many technical details.
Well, it's not too difficult. Mass 2 times V2. So let's have mass 1 V2. That is basically the conservation momentum. The mass of one object times its velocity of that same object is going to equal to the mass of the second object times its velocity. That's a constant. So if this mass here is 1/100th of this mass here, then this velocity has to be 100 times bigger. That's all it is. It's really simple conservation momentum. Brandon understood this, and I hope it's not too difficult for you.
No, listen, Rumpus, you're being condescending when you say.
No, I'm not. Well, okay. If you said you didn't understand it, I don't mean to be. I want to pitch it at the level you're happy with. And you said you were unhappy with me showing you an equation, so I was just trying to show that it's a really simple equation. It's just two numbers multiplied by one that gives you momentum. And that's
I've reached my limit of being friendly with you. You're being condescending now.
Well, okay, fine. If we reach your limit, then fine. That's okay. You can't cut with me giving. I was trying to help you there. I was trying to give you the equation so you can understand and use it. And you said you didn't know the equation. I've given it to you. I'm trying to help here. But if you don't want to do that, then fine. I'll talk to someone else.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sure I'm getting a sore throat anyway. I'm almost reaching the limit of my patience.
Does anybody have any other questions for Rumpus regarding this rocket engine issue?
I do.
Just quickly, one
Brian?
thing, Brandon.
Go ahead.
Brian, before that, just a quick, sorry to interrupt you, Brian. Brandon, there are some details in this exhaust thing that you identified about the efficiency of engines that is quite a complicated issue and does rely on some pressure things. And I deliberately didn't go into all the details I could have done, and I'm prepared to, accept that there are some more details I can give you if you want the more comprehensive answer. Anyway, so just another thing. So go ahead, Brian.
Okay.
Okay, where does the combustion happen? Happening closed container in the rocket?
We can hear you, Brian, but you're a little low.
Yeah, you're a bit compelling.
Hold on.
Okay.
So here's the combustion chamber we were using the other day.
Yeah. Okay. Is it in an atmosphere? Is the atmosphere happening in a atmosphere?
This scenario here. I've got an echo now. So here we got
Oh, Brian, just mute when you're not talking because we're getting an echo from your side. Thank you.
Super echo, Brian. Right, so imagine this is what's happening in a vacuum. This is perfectly functional in a vacuum. And then Brandon brought up the perfectly reasonable point about this issue to do with the efficiency at different altitudes. And then I pointed out, if you missed this, Brian, you get this overpressure because you need, for maximum efficiency, you need what's called the hydrostatic pressure, which is quite a complicated concept. Which I won't go into just now. You want that to be the same as the atmospheric pressure, but in a vacuum, you will always get something like we've got here. But if you are working in a vacuum, you then want to make this cone incredibly long, because what you effectively want to do is to get the pressure. Because as this expands here, and I didn't go into this in detail when I was last talking to Brandon, because
It's a simple question, dude. It's a simple question.
Okay, yes, this is effective. You can think of it. This is almost good enough to be in a vacuum situation. Yes, okay.
Okay, so you're getting combustion. Your combustion's happening in a vacuum situation.
Well, no, the combustion is actually happening in the combustion chamber, which is not a vacuum, because in here there's a lot of high.
That was my
the
question.
vacuum's
So it's
outside.
happening-
The vacuum's
Okay, so it's happening. Gotcha. So it's happening in a pretty much closed atmosphere. Was where the combustion's happening.
Well, it's
Otherwise,
incredibly
we
high.
agree
Yeah,
that
this
it wouldn't
is
combust.
denser than this is higher pressure than obviously being inside the combustion chamber. This pressure in here is much higher than atmospheric pressure by many hundreds of times.
Okay. Now, if if you were, I don't think you're going to get any combustion with the whole universe. The strongest vacuum known to man, according to heliocentric model, would be out there in space. So,
Brian, you do know.
But
do you
this
know?
is my point. This is my point.
Okay.
Here's my point. Okay. So if we had a rocket in space, okay, I will agree that you will get solid separation. I'll agree that if you were to fire bullets, okay, the rocket would basically be the gun. But okay, solid separation, yeah, I'm good with that. But when you're talking about fluids, okay, I got a problem with that, because if you were in the rocket, okay, if you're in the rocket and you open the door, just say you had just about 10 to the -1 torr inside the rocket. There already wasn't much air in there, but a little bit of air.
Hold on, Brian. When you say inside the rocket, do you mean inside the combustion chamber, or do you mean inside the actual
No,
body of the rocket?
inside the cabin. Inside the cabin. So if I open the door and there was just a little bit of air in there,
Let me just start the cabin.
Let me ask my question. Let me ask my question.
Draw a cabin on this so we can understand your point. So here I've got the cabin now. I'm going to put this in a slightly different color. So just to make sure we all understand what you want. So and we've got a window, say here, and we've got an astronaut. We can put an astronaut in here. So here we got the astronaut now in there. I've drawn it as a star. So there's the astronaut inside the cabin, and it's connected to the combustion chamber. Okay, yep. Right, now what?
No, it's not. Okay, yeah, okay. So we opened the door for a second, and most of the air went out. There's just a little bit of air in there. There's about 1 psi.
Okay, so you're saying that now you want me to open a door out here, and there's
and there's like. So there's 1 psi in the cabin. That's it. Just 1 psi, not much.
Why not have it as an atmosphere? Why not have it as an atmosphere? Why not have it?
I don't know. Okay, so if I'm sitting there, on the ground, okay,
in the ground
or if I'm sitting in the floor of the cavern, okay, and I open the door in space. If I open the door in space, okay,
yeah, all
the air is all going to get sucked out.
Exactly.
Right? But I won't unless the air blows me out. I'll just sit there. Okay?
That's right. You're absolutely right.
That's why I have a problem with that. And my point is that I'll just sit there. So if you, hold on, let me make my point. Let me make my damn point. Oh my God. Okay, so if you launch me, you could call me a bullet and launch me as fuel. Solid separation, I'll give you that. You'll get a little bit of thrust. But with the gas that's already being sucked out, it's being sucked out with the whole universe behind it, basically. According to the heliocentric model. So how would it? So my last point is if you can thrust forward and with no pressure, then you can suck your way forward with pressure. I could get a strong ass vacuum in the atmosphere and suck my way forward.
Well, hold on, no, you can never suck yourself. You got it right. You said exactly correct. If you're this star here, then what happens to the air here has no effect whatsoever. So all this air, let me give it an arrow. So all this air that comes out in front of you, but the air over here that goes past you is going to push you, and it's all very keen on going towards the to the gap here, and then you'll be pushed out by pressure. Unless you hang on, you will be pushed out there. But if you were right over here, say, right next to this side, then yes, most of the air would just shoot past you, and you could hang on quite happily. You probably, if you're really close, if you are absolutely stuck against the wall of this chamber, yes, all the air would just shoot past you and out. If you could make sure there was no air behind.
That's my point.
Yeah.
My point is, you use bullets. You're using bullets as an example of getting thrust. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, that if you use me to launch me from the rocket, you'd get a little bit of acceleration. If you had 1 million of me,
exactly.
But if you use the rocket,
Brian,
the air was already being sucked out, man. So,
Brian, if you were here,
like I said, if you could thrust your way in no pressure, you could suck your way in pressure. You could get a strong ass vacuum and suck your way forward.
No. You seem to understand how the vacuums don't suck. Air pressure pushes. So, for instance,
I know that.
Right. So, why do you keep on talking about the vacuum sucking?
Because for every action, there's equal and opposite reaction. So, if I can, in no pressure, I can blow myself forward with air or with fuel.
You can never exert pressure on yourself. You can never if you're in the middle of space, no matter how much you wiggle around, you would never move. You could not.
So like this, exactly. And any sort of air is going to be sucked out immediately. The sun, like them big old giant sunbursts, it should send the sun moving. You know what I'm saying? Or a big ass volcano.
Right. Great to identify the concentration of momentum, but the point is those sunbursts are not even 1/1,000,000th of 1% of the mass of the sun. So they're irrelevant. They're just so small in comparison to the mass of the sun. Those sunbursts have no effect. They're just, the sun. It's a plasma, but it's quite a dense plasma.
Hold on. There's no resistance. If there's no resistance, then
but
sunbursts, even if they're 0.1%, you should get some movement. There's no resistance. Remember?
Excellent point, Brian. That's a very good point. That for instance, if you were to go up to a battleship or a aircraft carrier on a completely still piece of water and no wind, and you put your finger up against the aircraft carrier, no wind, the water was very calm day. If you spent long enough there, the aircraft carrier would start to move, even with the tiniest of forces. And you're absolutely right that if there was a constant force, even if it was a small one, it would cause the sun to move. But the point is, these eruptions all happen uniformly in all the same, in random directions. So the net effect is zero. But you're absolutely right. If it was just gassing out, ejecting solar flares from one direction, then you're absolutely right. Eventually the sun would start to move and it would accelerate. But because it's all
it evens out.
In all directions, there's no special direction. It's all, the net force is zero.
So it's random and it evens itself out by.
Correct. But you make good arguments, Brian. I'm impressed with the quality of the arguments and the fact you're worrying about small numbers and small things eventually adding up to big things. I like your thinking here, and I liked your idea. If you were in here, if you opened up the door, so if you were at the back of the thing here, and you opened up the door at the back, then all this gas stuff would shoot out here, fling you out, and then indeed you'd be flung out the back, and you would effectively, through conservation of momentum, with using this equation up here, your mass times your velocity you ejected out. This would increase, but obviously this would be a bit rather heavier than you are, but you would actually cause an increase in the velocity of the rocket by you being ejected out the back, just like the fuel.
Final question here. Okay.
Brian, I'm impressed. You've made 5 minutes. You made about 5 good points. I'm really impressed with you here. Carry on.
Well, I got one more. Okay. Final question. Okay. Could I sputter to the moon like 5 miles an hour? Because I was told, I used to buy everything when they said escape velocity. And then when they were talking about orbiting and slingshotting around planets, I was like, okay, that makes sense. They can steer just by getting in a planet's gravity or something's gravity and slingshot, okay? Because I never could understand how they could steer. But so I understood they needed a certain speed to get out of the Earth's atmosphere into space, and then they could steer, and then they could get more thrust by slingshot. But my question is, okay, could I trickle to the moon like 10 miles an hour? Or would I need escape velocity?
That's another question, Brian. You're on a roll here. I'm going to have to give you some points here. You've got Yes, you could. It's a very inefficient way of doing it. But let's suppose you could go at 5 miles an hour, but you need to have quite a powerful rocket, and you could keep on going at 5 miles an hour up. Just keep on going, and providing you kept the rocket to do that, kept on active. But you would actually leave the Earth's atmosphere. The reason we talk about an escape velocity is it means you have a one-off shot, and then without any more forces acting on it, you would then escape the Earth's gravitational field. That's an escape velocity. But you could, if you put a little rocket on something, and you could leave the atmosphere of the Earth and it feels Earth's gravitational field at 5 miles an hour. But it's incredibly inefficient. The reason you want maximum speed is if you look at the equations, it's much more fuel efficient to go as fast as you possibly can and get away from the Earth's Earth's gravitational field as quickly as possible. But you could do it the way you want to do it, but you'd need about 10 times more fuel, and so obviously that's not a way. But you could do it theoretically, yes.
Hey, where's the Lagrange point between the Earth and the Moon?
It's quite close to the Moon. I think I remember it's somewhere. Well, I think about 1/6 away from the Moon. In other words, if you put something there, would it go towards the Moon or the Earth? And I can't remember exactly where that is, but presumably the mass. So
all I have to do basically is get the Lagrange point for the Sun is 22,000 miles. So if I got to 23,000 miles going toward the Sun and timed it out just right, I could be going 5 miles an hour. If I timed it out right, I could use the Sun's gravity to get to the Moon just by hitting the Lagrange point at the same trajectory.
No,
as the Moon.
Lagrange point is a point. You can't. The Lagrange point is where the net forces are zero. So if you move past the Lagrange point, it would take you back to the
No, if I move past the Lagrange point, if I move past equilibrium, then I would be caught in the Sun's gravity.
You're absolutely right.
I don't really buy that, but if
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Sorry, Brian. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. If you got past the Lagrange point, then you would fall to one or the other. Yes. So if you could get to the Lagrange point between the Moon and the Earth, and you were there sitting there, you could, with one little action, going one way or the other, you would actually go towards the Moon or to the Earth. Yes, you're absolutely correct. My God.
Okay. Do you know the Lagrange point during an eclipse? Rumpus, do you know the Lagrange point during a solar eclipse?
Do I happen to know? Well, it won't. I don't know that off the top of my head, no.
That's all I got.
My God.
Okay. All right. Well, that was a lot of rocket talk. Two days in a row, pretty much. I think it was Friday we were talking about this before, wasn't it?
Yep.
All right. Cool. Appreciate it, Rumpus. Thank you for offering the other side of the coin on this. And, I'm just going to restate again. I'm not convinced either way. And I'd still like to see a larger demonstration of it. I don't really think it matters as far as the shape of the Earth, whether or not rockets work in a vacuum. But
correct.
Both of them kind of make sense to me. The whole idea that rockets move just because mass is being ejected away from them, it doesn't seem to make sense to me. 100%. It just doesn't. I guess it's not it doesn't make intuitive sense. Maybe that's
just think of machine guns and recoil. It's exactly the same principle.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Or a constant explosion blowing out the butt of the rocket.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought that the atmosphere had played some role in that, because what you're expelling, you're essentially pushing off of the air. So there is some air resistance, and that you just keep pushing and keep pushing off the air resistance. But maybe not. So I appreciate the information that you guys have provided and the arguments, as well as on the flat Earth side. Let me see what else I got here. Did anybody have any other questions for Rumpus on this before we kind of close this out for the day? No? Cool.
Brandon, it has nothing to do with pushing off the air. The only thing that air provides is a head-on resistance, as in air resistance. Trying to push through the air. You don't push off the air.
Yeah, no, I know. We've talked about it for like 4 or 5 hours the last couple days, and I completely understand the arguments you guys are making, and they're definitely make logical sense to me. I'd just like to see a better demonstration, like we've talked about in the past, George, doing it in a big vacuum chamber and doing some kind of experiment just to put it to bed once and for all. Because all the vacuum chamber experiments that are out there.
Happen.
Huh?
That's never going to happen, Brandon, because no organization like Martin Marietta Lockheed is going to let you use their huge vacuum chamber to do something like this.
Yeah, no.
George, I wasn't. Sorry to interrupt you, Brandon. George, I wasn't aware of this, but the NASA have got some amazing near vacuum rocket facility where they actually do test rockets.
I know.
Okay.
They do the testing in the diagonal at Colorado between Boulder and
it's in a vacuum chamber.
Lockheed Martin has a huge vacuum chamber they use for testing the satellites and rocket engines also.
Right. Okay. So they do test rockets in a vacuum, which I must admit I didn't realize. Okay, you knew this before, but I wasn't aware they tested full size rockets inside chambers that are very nearly perfect vacuums. But
why can't we use one of those chambers, George?
You're never going to be able to rent one of those because the cost to industry is huge to rent one of those things for an hour.
Yeah.
I wonder if they might let you, if they're about to do something, you might just say, "Can I just stick this in here for a moment, just before you set it off? Just stick this little toy rocket in there. Just take a picture of it."
What?
I don't want to book it
Maybe
myself.
with Rumpus, maybe with somebody like George's pull, because he has
I
pull.
bet George
maybe.
could persuade them. I bet George. I think George could persuade them. Go to car and say, "Look, while you're in the middle of the test, could I just zap in there, set off my little rocket, and then dash out again? Take a video of it. Would you mind?"
Pretty please.
Brandon,
you ever heard the saying, ask for forgiveness, not for permission, George? I think Rumpus is right. Just take the toy rocket in there, set it down, make some idle chit chat, then go out, close the door, and light it off.
Brandon, a rowing boat will not shift unless you can get the oars in the water resisting against the pressure of the water.
Yeah, but if you throw the oars out the back, you'll move forward, Mark.
Using the element of the water itself.
No. Just pick up the oar in your hand and chuck it out the back, and you will move forward. And no
chuck
water
it in the air.
So if I had a stack of 100 oars in the boat with me, and I just started chucking them out the back, you think I would start moving across the lake?
Exactly. You've got it.
Okay, that's where the fantasy comes in then, Rumpus. you're asking us to believe that.
Well, you try. Get a bowl. You need, obviously, the heavier it is, the bigger the effect.
You obviously haven't been in a rowboat and tried it.
Yeah. That's true. I haven't tried that. There's an experiment somebody could do.
If you throw anything out the back of the rowboat's going to react and move forward.
Or get a machine
I have no problem with solid separation, man. I have no problem at all with solid separation. Getting thrust. It's the fluid.
But Brian, fuel is solid. It's got mass, which is what matters. It doesn't have to be solid, sorry. It just has a bit of mass. And in the case of the Saturn V, it's an enormous amount of mass.
Yeah, but what I pointed out is the vacuum is not sucking me out, the solid, but it is sucking the fluid, the air. It's sucking that all out. It's not sucking me out, so that's got to be some kind of contrast, I would think.
I don't know what you meant by that, Brian. Stop while you're ahead. You had a fantastic run of questions and understanding. Don't wreck it now.
There you go, condescending again.
Well, I'm afraid. Well, he's just doing so well. I don't know. I feel like preserving Brian in aspic now, saying, "Look, this is what can happen. This is he was because he used to about 6 months ago. He didn't understand his arguments, and he now does. He's understand a lot more what I said than he did about 6 months ago.
Same arguments, Rumpus.
Yeah, but you didn't understand what I was saying 6 months ago, and you now understand a lot more.
I understood completely, man. I've been thinking about this since I was a kid, dude. You think nobody understands shit, dude? We understand it, bro.
You asked me a lot of silly questions before. This time you asked me lots of sensible ones.
I understand your arguments better than you do, probably.
See, there's condescension for you, Mark.
I don't know. Brian does think a lot about stuff. That's for sure, man. He's all over this shit, but we appreciate it. I think that's a mistake maybe we both make on both sides, is thinking that other people that we disagree with don't understand our argument, when it's not so much we don't understand. There's typically another reason that we have for not just adopting the other person's argument. Although I think ego comes into play sometimes too. Nobody wants to be wrong. Okay.
It may, but there's so many things that can't be demonstrated. We just have to accept. Just because the math works out, and there's umpteen things that you just can't demonstrate or won't, or having a good excuse why you won't. And these could be put to bed if you just show us.
Yeah,
Brandon
exactly.
And Brandon,
you could build yourself a little apparatus. It'd be pretty easy to do.
I understand that.
Brandon, I think you hit the nail on the head there. There's too many alpha males in this debate. Nobody's prepared to be humble and say, well, yeah, that's a good argument. I'll consider that, rather than sticking to their.
Well, if there is a good argument, we would consider it. But if you just pull shit out of your ass and throw it against the wall, why would we consider that?
It should be fair to, yeah.
You see,
it should be fair to ask for a 360-degree pan from the ISS or anywhere out there in orbit. Just one 360-degree pan. That's fair. We're paying for the ISS, our tax dollars, correct?
But Brian, what I was saying, the way you could show this conservation of momentum and throwing things out the back, like with a rowboat, without getting a rowboat,
I agree.
Make yourself. Well, just a minute. Let me describe. This is what you do.
Yeah, but I'm in agreement with you on that, George. You're going to say throwing shit out. Yeah, it's going to make me go. I agree with the solid separation, brother.
Okay.
There's a weakness on that though, because both the boat and the oars are already on the water that creates the momentum. We're talking about a vacuum.
You could have it on wheels. You could have it on wheels in a vacuum chamber.
Where are the wheels resting on?
On the ground.
Yeah, the ground. There you go. They've got a common position. We're talking about a vacuum way out in space where there's no common connection between the two bodies.
The ground.
Here's where I agree with that. Okay, so if I'm free falling and I'm right next to a bus, okay, I could kick off that bus. The bus would go one way a little bit. I'd probably shoot a lot further than the bus. I have no problem with solid separation. Okay, and springs. Yeah, spring would work if you had two things that it was sprung to. But as far as propelling yourself, I just have I'm skeptical about that, man. As far as with gas, because I don't think you can get combustion anyway. But if you say the combustion happens contained, then you're just why even combust it? If you're not getting any of the anything from the explosive part of it. Because like when I take my propane torch and I light it, it goes. It's overwhelmingly loud, dude. I wake up the neighbors if I try to do it at like 9 o'clock at night. It looks like a little mini rocket, but there's zero thrust from it. Zero thrust. It looks like a little NASA rocket booster, mini one, and there's not even an ounce of thrust.
Well, that's because
there is, but you just can't measure it. That's all.
You could measure
that much mass being ejected from the nozzle of a propane torch, Brian. The thing
when I turn my blower on,
it doesn't matter.
When I turn my blower on,
Brian, cool it.
Sorry, man. Sorry, go ahead.
Cool it a minute, Brian. Jesus Christ, put your listening ears on. It doesn't matter what form the mass takes. If it's going in one direction, there will be an opposite reaction in the opposite direction.
As long as they both got something common. As long as they've got a common connection to it. On your rowboat, no matter how many oars you've got, the oars and the rowboat are on the water. We're talking about in space where there's no connection.
The oars are not on the water. The oars are being tossed in the air.
I could hang the rowboat from a wire from the ceiling, and then if I threw out,
you've got the ceiling. You've got the ceiling in connection. Then no ceiling.
Yeah, but that's but it's not exerting a force left or right, though, is it, Mark?
No, you connect it to the ceiling, and so that the oars and the boat are connected to the ceiling. We're talking about outer space where you've got a rocket. And you've got thrust.
What force do you think a wire connected to the ceiling in some ways generating any horizontal forces? It can't.
It's connected to the ceiling. Come on.
Oh, God.
Come on,
if you
Mark.
had any understanding of physics, you would realise that was a really stupid comment, Mark.
No. Your argument is that we've got a vacuum of space where there's nothing connected to anything. We've got a vacuum. And yet you're trying to make me conclude an example where I'm on water or I'm connected to a ceiling. You've got to remove any connection between the rowboat and the stuff that you're going to throw out of it.
But if you understood basic physics and vertical horizontal force, you would realise it doesn't make any difference. Go ahead, George.
This is beyond stupid to address.
Okay. Hey, okay. George, this is beyond stupid. Yeah, okay. It's
is
the same argument.
Well, look, my point was when I turn my blower on, I feel it. I feel it when I'm blowing. I feel it. It's pushing against me, bro. But that propane torch is overwhelmingly loud, and dude, it gets up to about 2,600 Celsius, man. It's insanely hot, dude.
Brian, if you put a really Brian, if you put a really sensitive
bearing on it,
Brian, if you put a really sensitive force meter on the other end of that hat where your hands are, you would be able to measure a force. It's just be small. That's all.
My point is that explode, all that flame and all that show and all that noise is doing diddly squat compared to a little blower that I'm getting pushed against.
Well, that's why
right.
you need to chuck out a great
much mass. There isn't that much mass being ejected from the nozzle, Brian. There isn't that much mass and velocity. There's a negligible momentum associated with the gas coming out of the propane torch.
Okay, I understand that, and that's why I bring up this point. I understand. Okay, silent separation. If you want to use bullets, that's fine. If you want to use bullets, but the fact that's because they're mutually connected in that chamber. But look, but as far as gas, you're trying to use something that the universe is sucking against.
Do you accept that rockets like the Saturn V are mostly out of fuel, and it all gets chucked out the back, and there are don't know how many bloody thousands of tons there is, but it all gets chucked out the back at incredible speed.
How about this, Rumpus? How about this? Say if I'm on the rocket, okay, and I got 200,000 pounds of fuel in the rocket, okay, and if I just if I don't light it, okay, and I just open the door, I just open the hatch, boom, and all the air goes out, okay, and all the air is sucked out. If that pushes me forward, then I could use a vacuum to propel myself in an atmosphere. I could use if just opening the door and letting the 200,000 pounds out pushes me forward, so it's getting sucked out, but it's pushing me forward too. It can't be both, bro.
But Brian, you need to launch off from the ground where there's one atmosphere. So if you open the door, nothing would happen. So the point is, Brian, you need to understand that the mass of the fuel is absolutely enormous, and it's kicked out the back at an incredible speed. And you're going to go in the opposite direction, just like you accepted with recoil and the other examples where you accepted if you're throwing out oars from a boat, it would make you go in the opposite direction. Now multiply those oars by a factor of 1,000,000. Multiply the velocity with
important. We call that momentum.
I understand the equations, man.
Brian, listen a minute.
Go ahead.
Take your propane torch. How much do you think the propane inside one of those canisters weighs? It's about a pound. How long does it take to
about
burn
20 pounds.
through?
About 20 pounds.
Shut up, Brian. Shut up for a moment.
He's got a big one, I think. George, he's got a big one, I think.
Say what?
He's got a big one, I think. He's got a big tank of propane, I think.
No, a handheld propane torch he's talking about. If you have that,
20 pounds. That's all I said was 20 pounds, bro.
Say what?
He's saying it's 20 pounds
propane tank, a common everyday 20 pound, not a camping tank, just the torch tank. It's 20 pounds.
Okay. How long does it take to burn through that 20 pounds? Hours.
About 10 minutes. About 10 minutes on full blast. I understand the equations, George. My point is if you have the whole universe stuck. Wait, you didn't answer my question. If I have 200,000 pounds of rocket fuel and I didn't ignite it, I just opened the hatch, would it propel me forward? Can I blow up a balloon in space and unpunch the balloon and it would blow forward? That's my question.
Yeah, Brian, if you took all the fuel in the Saturn V rocket, which is however many bloody hundreds of thousands of tons, and you chucked it out at 10 or 20,000 miles an hour, it would have exactly the same effect as it firing. If you were capable of throwing at that speed, you would have exactly the same effect. Yes. So
when there was a leak in the ISS, then when there was a leak on the ISS and there was air coming out, it was pushing.
Well, that's just one atmosphere. Hold on. We were saying just now, if you imagine all the mass of the fuel, which is however many 100,000 tons, you flung it out at 40,000 miles an hour, but that's an enormous force required to do that. The pressure you would have to exert to do that would be incredible. But that's what's provided by the chemical reaction provides that force. So, but on the space station, there's just one atmosphere in there. So
to answer Brian's question, Yes, Brian, if you had a propane tank and you put it out into the vacuum of space, you opened it up, it would move forward because of the pressure differential between the pressurized gas in the tank and the low pressure in the vacuum of space. The gas would escape, it would go out, and the tank would move in the opposite direction. But it wouldn't move very fast, necessarily. But a CO2 canister, like you use in these little bottle rockets, it will go fast because it's highly compressed gas that when you open up the CO2 canister, you know, the one about the size of your thumb or whatever, those things will take off very fast because of the high pressure differential.
Hey, I'm gonna cut you guys off for a minute. We've talked about this a lot. I wanted to give a chance for SE to tell us about his work filming the sun. If SE's around, SE, are you available to just tell us about what you've been doing in regards to your sun videos?
Sure, Brandon, I'm here. What would you like to know?
Awesome. Just this is your video. I've got your latest video up. I should be sharing it in Discord, and it's called P900 Sunspot. Looks like you just took it today, actually, right? The 18th. So
Yep,
what's going on? What are you interested in? What are you doing out there? Why are you filming the sun? And what have you learned so far?
It fascinates me. I got a sun filter, and the sunspots, they're never the same. They appear, they disappear. Sometimes there's none there. It fascinates me. Along with the moon, I also like shooting the moon and stuff. But yeah, anything particular like you want to know, Brandon?
Is there anything about the sunspots that lends evidence to the shape of the Earth, in your opinion, or has it given you any clues as to what's going on with the celestial objects?
No, none whatsoever. I don't think it has anything to do. It's just, it fascinates me because, you know what they say, it's a thermonuclear reaction and blah, blah, blah. But when I look at it, it doesn't look like no thermonuclear reaction to me.
No, it
Don't
is
forget,
amazing.
it's
The
just
sun. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, the sun absolutely fascinates me as well as the moon. But just that we have this giant, what looks like a giant orb hovering over us, moving across the sky each day, that provides all of the energy that kind of runs our world, grows our crops, keeps us warm, creates the weather, all that shit, is just fascinating to think about what that is. I know heliocentrists will tell you that they know exactly what the sun is and what's in the core of the sun and how much of this and how much of that is at the sun, and they've got spectrography or whatever that word is, and other things.
Spectroscopy, yeah, it's a mouthful.
Spectroscopy, yeah.
Spectroscopy, yeah, right. But I just find it kind of surreal just to look at the sun and the moon personally.
Yeah, it really fascinates me. It's like when you look at it through a sun filter, it changes everything, you know? And what freaks me out is the sunspots. They always seem to appear from one side and then they travel from east to west.
That's right. They rotate round because it's a sphere, and it is a rotating system, and the sunspots rotate with a rotating spherical sun.
Right. We know what the story is, but do you have any proof of what is the sun rumpus? Like, what's your proof that it's a thermonuclear reaction converting hydrogen to helium, or is it the other way around?
Yeah, converts hydrogen to helium. Yeah, converts hydrogen to helium. Well, we know what nuclear reactions are. We worked out there was a big problem until the turn of the 20th century that the people like Lord Thomson, Kelvin, worked out what the lifetime of the sun would be. And in fact, they worked out how long the Earth was around, because we said, well, this is, if we assume that it's just releasing heat, we could work out what the heat capacity of it was. And then they worked out that it would only last a few 100,000 years. And so this was then suggested, well, that's therefore the Earth couldn't be any older than that. There was a big debate in the middle of the 19th century, therefore, about what the age of the Earth was based upon the sun. It was only when we discovered nuclear reactions and radioactivity we realized there was this enormous resource of energy, and then that was fission, and then we discovered using the equations that there's this resource of fusion, and we would expect to see certain spectroscopy spectroscopic activity. And if we knew that we're going from hydrogen to helium, would be a huge energy generator as a result of that. And we can check the contents of the sun by spectroscopy. And then if we do the equations, we can work out. We know what the mass of the sun is. Therefore, we know what the density of the sun is, and we can see what the temperature of the sun is. And then we can work out from the solar flares. There's a lot of much hotter stuff actually underneath the surface. And then we know that that's hot enough to drive hydrogen atoms together and form helium. Because we know that causes an enormous amount of release of energy, because we can actually do that on here in labs, things like JET and various other fusion reactors, not fission, fusion reactors. And in fact, the H-bomb was based on fusion, so that you actually need a fission explosion to then cause a fusion explosion. And so we know about how the mechanics, that's how an H-bomb works. So we know that it's like an H-bomb. And so we know where the energy comes from, and it's producing all sorts of things. And we know from neutrinos that come from the center, because neutrinos penetrate from the center of the sun. We know exactly what's coming out of there. So we know a heck of a lot about the sun.
Yeah, I mean, this is the most fascinating thing in our world.
Is there water on the sun, Rumpus?
Perfect floating, glowing orb that
Rumpus,
provides all of our energy. And
sun?
you look at that thing and you apply these sciences that you just talked about and say, we know this, and therefore we know that. And a lot of those are based on assumptions, presuppositions, and other things, especially when you're talking about what's inside the sun and how it works, Rumpus. No one knows that.
We can see, we do.
Hey, Rumpus, is there water on the sun?
There is hydrogen and oxygen, but it's a plasma, so there's no liquid.
Hold on. Is there water on the sun? Or let me put it this way. Is there water vapor on the sun?
No, because hydrogen and oxygen are dissociated. It turns
into
a plasma.
So hold on. So if I showed you, hold on.
Let me explain. Give me 5 seconds. You give me 5 seconds. The hydrogen and oxygen would dissociate. So you'll have hydrogen and oxygen, but it will not be in the form of water. Go ahead.
So would you like to see from a university a paper? I think it's from Stanford. They did the study and they found water vapor on the sun.
That'd be interesting if it's on the outside, but inside it would be a plasma. So I don't see how you're not going to get water molecules inside the sun, I'm afraid. I don't see how that could be. I mean, there might be some formed coming out when it's out. Comes outside.
So just speaking of water, did you know the crying nebula? Have you heard of that? In science?
Nebulas you'll have it because the temperature is much less.
Oh, what about the star that rains teardrops? Have you heard of that before? Or this star that cries teardrops. Pardon me, teardrops of water. Did you hear that?
I haven't heard of that one. No, I haven't heard of that one.
No. So they have observations where they see these particular bodies in let's be honest, they're in grayscale when they're observed or measured. Let's say there's no color to them, right?
What the hell is this guy?
Right.
Okay. There does seem to be something about their water. The steam.
Hold on.
Yeah, they found some. Yeah, you're right. Water has been found on the sun. It would appear.
What?
Apparently, it's steam. It's obviously not in liquid form, but I must admit,
water vapor. Yeah,
on the sun. Vapor, steam. Yeah, water vapor.
How the fuck would water get near a hydrogen explosion, or whatever you call it?
So now
water's just hydrogen and oxygen. So there's hydrogen and oxygen in the sun.
Yeah. Okay.
But I must admit, I thought it's supposed to be a plasma. So quite how those hydrogen and water has come together, I must admit, very surprised me, because I would have thought it would just be a plasma. Plasma, basically, remember, means that the electrons have actually left the nucleus, and so you don't even have molecules. You don't even have atoms.
Such a fantastic fairy tale.
The nucleus is separated.
What a fancy tale you read. What a fancy tale.
Well, it's a fact. We can know because we can heat water. We can heat things up. If you look inside an oven, for instance, when you start to lose the ability to see inside it, that's when you're forming a plasma, and you can no longer see things because plasma interacts with light. We know. We can measure the temperature. We know the surface of the sun is 5,000 odd degrees. We can heat things to 5,000 degrees, and we know what happens. It turns into a plasma.
Now, Rumpus, let's be honest. Okay, so what we do with spectroscopy here is we shine light through fluids. We also put minerals and elements in types of solutions, and we get their refractive light index, let's say, okay, to get their property. Do you understand? And that's usually through a grayscale, correct?
Sorry, I was just reading this paper. Sorry, could you say what you said again? Sorry.
Fuck, a waste of time. Never mind. Anyway, just go read the process of spectroscopy.
Yes, I must admit,
the chemical process, the solution process for elements here on Earth. Then go look at how they do it for space. There's a leap of logic, if you will, between the spectroscopy process here on Earth versus the process of looking out. And the funny part is, if you look at these little square boxes that they shoot infrared up into the sky with, this is where they get their universal data. It's way more efficient and effective shooting from the ground up than it is using satellites. So all these stuff that you see in spectroscopy from science is nothing remotely close to the final product. In fact, the final product is not even anywhere remotely close to the actual data.
Here's a tiny detail,
right?
On spectroscopy. It's called NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance, where the actual atom or molecule is vibrated, and that's just a few feet from the light source.
That's got nothing to do with spectroscopy.
Would you shut up?
You don't know the difference between the two.
So
Rumpus,
hold on, Jimbo. Rumpus. So when they do space spectroscopy, one of the ways that they do it is they absorb the light through a telescope, and that light passes through a fluid.
They don't absorb the light in a telescope. If it absorbed it, you wouldn't be able to see it. It doesn't absorb.
Well, it goes through it, right? Sorry, bad adjective.
That's right. It doesn't
My
absorb
point is that we're looking at locally what we call a molecule and getting it excited locally and looking at the light emitted from it through a prism and the rainbow it gives, the color picture.
You got it. There's other ways too. They do fluid and chemical solutions.
To say that you can point an exciting beam at a molecule billions of miles away, excite it, and register the light coming off it as secondary emission is so insane. It's
not a
ludicrous.
secondary emission. No, it just behaves exactly the same. In other words,
It's ludicrous applying nuclear magnetic resonance
nothing to do with
at a
NMR.
molecular level that we can do in a lab here on Earth to something that you're claiming to excite a little molecule a billion miles away and registering that little photon of light that comes off it. I'm sorry.
Are you aware
It's
that
totally
light,
bogus science. Thank you.
are you
I'm
aware
done.
that light is generated by movement of electrons, and nuclear magnetic resonance is all about the nuclear?
Light is generated locally by a process. It involves energy and
Does
matter.
it involve the
I'm done.
nucleus? Does it involve the nucleus?
Light is generated locally by a process called.
Yeah. Does that process involve the nucleus?
Followed by secondary emission, which
Does
is
that
light
process
itself.
involve the nucleus?
No. The excitation of the molecule causes like an electron
And does
in
that
one
involve the
valence,
nucleus?
stable valence, to rise up to another
And does
valence
that involve the
level.
nucleus?
And then when the nucleus, absolutely, it involves exciting the orbiting electrons around the
Does that
nucleus.
involve the nucleus?
So that's around the nucleus. So in that sense, yeah, these are things that are, quote, orbiting
No,
the nucleus.
It doesn't involve
So,
the nucleus.
as
It
I
only
say, if you
involves the
shut the
electron
fuck
levels.
up for 2
And
minutes and
nuclear
let me
magnetic
finish,
resonance
that
is
you
only
can,
concerned
because
with the
you have to
nucleus.
defend your
You're
lies
talking
with
about
bogus
two
science.
different
You're
things. You know
total
nothing about
bullshit.
this
So I'm
subject.
pretty good. I've had
You
what I
know
have
nothing
to say,
about this
and
subject
you
at
can't
all.
excite an atom a billion
You know
miles
nothing
away
about this
and
subject
register
at all.
the
You don't
light
even know the
emitted
difference
structure.
You
between
guys are
nucleus
talking
and
over each other. No one can hear either of you
You
guys.
can't only do that locally.
Trump has done his usual thing where he tries to do gotcha and shut down the conversation after his gotcha. I'd really like to hear what they have to say and hear their final points without them playing gotcha and being petty.
Yeah, which is like
especially
you know, being stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Lemon.
If Rumpus is not going to let new information into the discussion, I don't know why Rumpus needs to be part of this discussion then.
Well, you don't even you never add anything, Lemon.
And exclude anybody who
You never
doesn't
say
seem
anything of
worthy
any
to
value
have the
whatsoever.
discussion.
Why don't you go away?
Here.
Go away, Lemon. You've nothing ever to say of any use whatsoever.
No, yes, he does. Lemon is more
No,
than
he
welcome here, Rumpus. Many people feel the same way about you, Rumpus. And
yeah, but they're wrong.
I don't kick you off.
Hey, Rumpus. Jimbo seems to always confuse chemistry with nuclear processes. Anything that has to do with electrons and valence electrons and bonding goes under the heading of chemistry.
Yeah, he doesn't understand that. Yeah, he doesn't even understand the starting point. It's amazing.
His gotcha didn't even work because he said the area around the nucleus, which counts anyway for the electron shell.
Electron shells have to do with chemical processes, not nuclear processes.
Well, listen, guys.
okay.
I hate to cut the discussion short. We're gonna. Well, we can continue this afterwards. I just want to. I just want to close
just
this.
5 seconds. Apparently, this water only exists in the cool sunspots, and that's why it's in a molecular form and not in a plasma form. That's it. Finished.
Water on the sun. All right. Let's go for
in the sunspots.
Yeah. All right. Let's go for our final thoughts. I post. Oh, we have a super chat. Let me do that first. Taking Back Eden, FE, 24,901 mile Earth circumference, sun moving at 1,000 plus miles per hour above the plane rather than the Earth rotating 24 hours a day. Yep, that would make sense. Taking Back Eden. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support. Okay, SE, good footage on the sun, and I was playing a lot of that while we were having that discussion, and put your link in the chat for people to check out. Also wanted to mention again that Travis is on location. He is this morning he was shooting the Channel Islands. I don't know everything that he's going to shoot, but go and subscribe to him and check out his streams when they pop up, and you'll be the first ones to see the cool observations that he comes home with. So I guess he won't be on the panel for a while because he is out doing actual observations, which is awesome. Flat Earth Data, you got anything new coming on your channel? I'll pop your channel in the YouTube chat in case anybody needs the link. There's that.
Waiting for warmer weather and a little less paranoia. But have you ever researched the, I think it's called the Opera. It is the satellite or telescope opera symptom. Let me just you might want to take a look at it. Yeah, let me just dig it up and I'll get to the name for it. But it is interesting how the leaps of logic flying by the seat of the pants and the non-use of the scientific method allows you to listen to somebody like George and Rumpus go on about their daily walk in the park. Meanwhile, while they're walking in the park describing their fantasy land, nowhere in reality can it be presented.
You're a science denier.
No, it's not a science denier at all. I actually do like science quite a bit. I like applied sciences.
You know nothing about it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I know what I see and I know what I can observe. Now I know how to operate an aircraft, and I don't experience any rotation or curvature when I fly.
Sounds like we're getting back into a discussion. Is this your final thoughts, Data, or do you want to save this for the after show?
Well, these guys just like, listen, if they're going to try to tell you that Newton's third law is applicable to rockets, but there's nowhere you can demonstrate it except for a small container, and they think that they're winning, welcome to Flat Earth, guys.
All right, I want to see this. Let's wait till after the show. Let's take a look at what you're talking about. Let me just get through the final thoughts. We'll start off with Brian Leakey. Brian.
Yeah, man, I don't know if y'all can hear me any good, but I'll keep it short. I think that if you're out in the middle of space by their model and you open the hatch, okay, and does the air get sucked out or does the air blow me forward? Okay, which one is it? I don't think it would be both. I think the air would expand out into the everlasting infinite vacuum. They don't like to call it a vacuum, but it's the strongest vacuum known to man, apparently. by their model, and either it would suck the air out or the air would push me forward. I don't think it would be both. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Brian. Check out Brian's channel, Flat Earth Tests. I put the link in YouTube. Good stuff on there. Data, you final thoughts on today's show?
A good show, Brandon. Thanks for putting it on. Look forward to tomorrow. Tomorrow and more of it.
Hell yeah. Thanks, Data. All right. Mark, Helvetica Bold, final thoughts.
Let's play cricket. The rules of cricket is based on being a gentleman.
Absolutely. Did I lose you, or did you stop talking?
No.
Short and sweet.
If it's cricket, it's based on being a gentleman. And when we argue amongst ourselves, let's just be gentlemen and not be condescending or have any superiority complex or inferiority complex.
Sounds good to me. Do you have a YouTube channel, Mark?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, all right. Just didn't know if there was anything that you wanted to plug, or
not yet.
Okay, thank you, sir. Jeremy, Jimbo.
Yeah, I'll be Mr. Fucking Nice Guy the day I hear people actually get to finish a fucking sentence without being interrupted by fucking dumbass interrupters. Until then, I guess I'm gonna be a fucking asshole.
Hey, Jimbo, could you put a link to your channel in? I'm subscribed, but I can't find the link right now in the general for me, please.
Sure.
Thanks, man.
You bet.
Okay. Yep, and check out Jimbo's channel. George, you there? Final thoughts?
Here, Jimbo doesn't have to try to be an asshole. He comes about it naturally. It's so surprising. It's like you think he's hitting a home run. He's running the bases, and then he gets to third and trying to make it to home, and he stumbles and does a face plant and gets a mouthful of dirt. And you wonder, how does he misconstrue everything? But anyway, have a good one.
Thanks, George. And you do have a YouTube channel, so
fuck you, you rat bastard. That's how I misconstrue it.
All right, I put the link to your channel in the chat. Thanks, George. Howard. Left lane, Howard.
Hello. Yeah, good show. I'll pass on comment.
Okay, thank you very much. SE Montreal.
Yeah, good show, Brandon. I'm still laughing with Jimbo. By the way, shout out Jimbo. He has some heavy-duty footage on petrified stuff. I think you should give him a show just for Jimbo so we can discuss his petrified. He has some amazing stuff.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. No joke, no word of a lie. And wow, great show. And Rumpus, you made it through the whole show, bro. Congratulations. I believe it's your first. Peace out, everybody.
Thanks, SE. Bob Dole. Okay, and the Rumpus.
Yeah, I would say most amazing thing about this thing has been Brian's sensible questions, and he understood quite a lot of the concepts, but he seems to have some obsession about opening up a door and being blown out of it. And I don't quite understand why he thinks that's relevant to rockets, but I thought we'll have to do that at another time. But yes, it's all about the conservation of momentum, which is really simple, really demonstratable, and you don't have to worry about things like gravity if you orientate your system horizontally with respect to a vertical system. And I'm very frustrated that Mark can't understand some simple concepts to do with conservation of momentum. He seems to understand half of them, and then he sort of gives up when he gets to some crucial point. But yes, I think we made some sort of progress here, and there's a lot more about the.
That was unfair.
Was it? Oh, sorry. There's a lot more about this rocket stuff to do with the nozzles that you identified, Brandon. That is about twice as complicated as anything we've discussed so far, which I'd like to discuss one day. But anything else? I mean, people like Flat Earth Data, who knows no physics at all, thinks he can lecture other people about this, and yet he can't do the physics or understand conservation of momentum. things that 13-year-olds can do. I mean, he can't do basic high school maths, and yet you listen to him. It's very shocking. And Jimbo as well. He doesn't understand the difference between the nucleus and the electrons. He doesn't understand where light comes from. He seems to think that NMR has something to do with light, and it doesn't. Light is a result of electron transitions, and he thinks NMR has got something to do with light. Unfortunately, there are some people here who are basically either ignorant of science or deny science. Anyway, finish there.
All right, appreciate it, Rumpus. You made it 2 shows in a row without getting booted off the panel, so I commend you and I appreciate the discussion. As do I of all the panel members, including the Ballers, George, Left Lane, anybody else that joined, and the Flat Earthers, who I am obviously partial to. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. And we will be back tomorrow night. I don't know what we'll be discussing. If anybody has any ideas for a one-on-one debate, let me know. I'd be happy to set that up. Anybody wants to go one-on-one, I have a special debate room that they can go into so that they won't be molested by the rest of the panel during the debate. And we'll find an appropriate person to moderate, which will probably be me. But just let me know. I'll be right back. I will record the after show. And thanks again, guys. Okay. We had one final super chat. Oops, I should have read that while I was in the room. Let me open the room. Oh, we did have one final super chat from Smurfer Girl Whatevs. Conjecture, conjecture, conjecture. Because I said so. Guess, guess, guess. Wine, because reasons. Mic drop. That was a pretty good argument, Smurfer Girl. Thank you very much. $5. Appreciate it. All right, I'll be back. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. Somehow we did get 2 days in a row of the rumpus and discussion about rocket engines. I don't know how that happened. It wasn't exactly planned, but it seems to be a subject that gets people going. So tomorrow I will do my best to steer it away from that conversation. If there's any topic that you'd like to see discussed, type it in chat. I'll take a look and see if I can hook something up. If you've got a suggestion for a one-on-one debate, let me know that too. I'm happy to try to set something up. Other than that, we'll see you tomorrow. I appreciate everybody coming in the chat. And Smurfer Girl Whatever says, I totally just debunked both sides for sure. Yeah, I was wondering which side you were talking about there. But thanks, guys, in chat. Thanks to the mods. Thanks to everybody who supported the channel. Thanks to the channel members. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it, guys. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a good one. Bye.